Hello and welcome to the GT World Challenge Asia Esports Series presented by Tarmac Words. My name is Paul Jeffrey and today I am delighted to be presenting My name is Paul Jeffrey and today I am delighted to be presenting the British Grand Prix, the Silverstone Grand Prix series. From the home today's of the British Grand Prix, the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. In today's show we'll be having two races once again these races 60 minutes with racing pro pit stop and amateur drivers, and of course for the real world racing pro and amateur drivers as well. And of course this is the GT World Challenge Asia Esports Series presented by Tarmac Works, and we are delighted to bring high-level international esport racing to the Asia region. First, we went to Europe, then we went to the Americas, and now it is time for the Asia region to receive the SRO eSport treatment. I want to give you a little bit of an idea about how this championship is put together. The drivers are based in their own homes using their own racing rig equipment, and they're based in places like China, Hong Kong, Japan and Australia. And what happens is they race online in a server. They send their feed to our race control team based in Italy. What the Italian team do is then send the feed in real time to the commentators in France and the United Kingdom. The commentators apply their voice on top of it, send the feed back to Italy once again, where the graphics and overlays are put onto the broadcast and sent out on to the world feed. This is done by a company called AK Informatica that run these GT World Challenge eSport Championships, and I think it's a fantastic technical achievement to be able to get such a smooth, low latency quality broadcast out to the drivers and out to the world public as well. So I'm very excited to see this opportunity that has come forth to get the Asia region drivers together in a championship like this and bring the broadcast to you at home. Now, speaking a little bit of the drivers, this is the third round of the championship. We opened the season at the Monza circuit in Italy. Last time out, we raced at Laguna Seca in the United States of America, and now it's the turn of Great Britain and the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. The race format is a simple one. They are a 60-minute sprint endurance race. There's a mandatory pit stop as well. The drivers will qualify beforehand, and we're made up of two different races today, two different categories. One is for sim racing drivers, professional and amateur, so drivers can qualify in the Asia region through a hot lap competition. If they're fast enough to set a time, they will join the grid and race with their rivals. And then we have the Real World Pro and Am competition, which is exclusively for real world GT drivers in pro and amateur. We've seen great racing across both championships. Last time out at Laguna Seca was once again a Davison Padiachi walkaway at the front of the field. Padiachi having won the first two races of the season in the real world category and is performing incredibly highly so far. But with this being the third round, there will be improvements from the drivers across the board. And let's have a look now at the standings ahead of that first race of the day. In the sim driver Am, we've got Carl Peterson at the head of the championship in the Laundry House team, ahead of his teammate Terry Rayton. Peterson having a very strong and consistent season, Laundry House looking like the form team of the year so far. Now, as I say, we're split into pro and Am for the sim driver, and in the pro sim driver standings, Kin Long Lee leads the championship by a single point ahead of Manola and Joseph Jesus IV. Again, very few points separate these drivers. There's all to play for in the remaining two rounds of the season. For the real drivers in the amateur category, it's Kevin C that leads from Yuki Taniguchi in second place, 50 versus 25 points. In this series, there are 25 points for a win, all the way down to 10th place. In the pro standings, Davison Padiachi, again with a perfect score of 50, courtesy of his two race victories from the opening 2 rounds of the season. But as we saw last time out at Laguna Seca, anything could happen. Pagliacci, for example, in the Pro Championship, had a very difficult qualification, almost got caught up in a T1 accident at the Andretti hairpin, which is a famous trouble spot at the Laguna Seca. So anything could happen in the remaining races, and it usually does. But this weekend, we're at Silverstone. It's the home of the British Grand Prix. It's a high-speed circuit, very different to Laguna Seca last time out. Downforce will be important. Strategy will be important as well, keeping the tyres alive, staying out of trouble and nailing those critical laps, lap after lap, a key to success in this particular venue. And don't forget, there are points on offer as well, so consistency is very important across the board. Enough of that though. In a moment we're going to have a look at the drivers. As I say, in the AM category there are hot lap qualifiers, so there will be some new names in the Sim Pro and Am series, and let's have a look at who they are now. As you can see, we have got a variety of drivers from different parts of the Asia region. We've got Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, South Korea and Thailand, amongst other countries. We've got a variety of different cars and different teams as well, and it all makes for an incredibly exciting esports series in the GT Asia Esports presented by Tarmac Works. And I'm going to hand over now to my colleague Mr. Ben Constanduris, who will pick up the action with GT World Challenge commentator David Addison ahead of the opening round of this evening at the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit in the United Kingdom.
Thank you very much, Paul. Here is the entry lists for both the sim race and the real driver entry list going through there, as we've already seen the championship standings with Pagliacci with a full 50 points. Plenty of drivers in this entry list will be wanting to be able to, and have the ability also, to claim victory today. Pagliacci hasn't necessarily led all of the races, but by the time he gets to the end of the race, he is at top of the pile. Chris van der Drift there back after missing the second round. Hello, my name is Ben Constanduris. Can't wait to join David Addison in the commentary box in a few moments' time when we get the first of our races, which is the sim driver races. They are the more experienced in their own sims, professional, effectively, sim drivers out there in Asia. And then we'll have the real world drivers join us for the second of our 1 hour races. Don't forget, a mandatory pit stop, which is incredibly important. You don't actually need to do anything in the pit stop except put 1 single litre of fuel in the car. You, of course, can put more if you want, and you can also change tyres if you want, but ultimately the idea and the way that the tyres have been built completely identical to the real world tyres, thanks to Pirelli sharing data with the game developers. These tyres should be able to do a full 50 minutes. Now, conditions, very, very interesting today, much like we saw from the final round of the British GT Championship at the weekend. Cold and overcast was certainly the last time I looked at the data coming out of the game. So it'll be very, very tricky to manage their tyres and get the best out of them throughout the full hour. And, of course, with that overcast and the cold conditions means there is the possibility of rain. Now, rain in gaming is incredibly, incredibly difficult to deal with. Very, very low grip, and because you don't have that feel as a driver, a little bit harder to find the ultimate grip. Some cars manage the rain a lot better than others. Certainly the mid-engined cars that we saw when we did this for the European Series certainly dealt with rain better at the Nürburgring. So just a few moments away then from getting our sim drivers underway, a very close championship. Interestingly though, as you may have seen in that entry list, no De Jesus in the entry list for today. So he is our round 1 winner, and he's missing this round. Andrew Lawrenson is the round 2 winner. He is there, but not on the top of the pile in terms of qualifying. So our championship leader actually down in 24th position in qualifying. So really, it is completely open as to who is going to get the best out of the conditions at Silverstone. Silverstone this week, and then the next time we come together, it will be the Spa-Francorchamps circuit, and we'll finish up with Suzuka, which these guys have already raced on in the Charity Cup a couple of months back. That is the rest of the series, so we are 3 rounds in, and we have 3 rounds remaining. This is the midpoint of both of our GT World Asia Championships, virtually, with 2 rounds left after this one. But of course, we haven't started this one yet, so we've got 3 races still to go. Just a few moments away then from getting ourselves underway, and very exciting to find out exactly who has the potential to do well here. We know that certain brands go better at Silverstone. Everyone is locked into their brand if they are a pro driver in the sim category. The AMs actually only have 2 spots that they can qualify into. So each brand has 2 spots, and sometimes those spots are already taken away. That's why we've got such a variety of car, and therefore you may choose to qualify in a Ferrari, or you may choose to qualify in a Nissan. It might be easier to get into the race by choosing a Nissan to qualify in rather than, say, the McLaren. So let's head to the track, and David Addison is your lead commentator for this first 1-hour race with the sim drivers.
Thanks, Ben. Can't wait, because we have a really good jumble grid. As you say, championship leader King Long Lee, the pro class championship leader, might as well be starting in Brackley, the nearest town. He's so far back on the grid. Kelvin Chen is the driver on pole position, and we have a very quirky lineup in as much as the bulk of the front is all drivers out of the AM Championship. But if you have a look at the red background to the numbers as against the whites, you'll see how many AMs are up there against the pros. Kelvin Chen starts on pole position. Philippa Baquida, representing the female element of the championships, a great effort in qualifying to go second fastest. It is Guillaume Kim, third on the grid. Carl Peterson is fourth. Now remember, he had an outright win as an AM back at Monza. Andika Malauna lines up fifth, and Andrew Lawrenson, who had a win last time out at Laguna Seca as a pro, he is sixth on the grid as the cars now accelerate away on to this final warming up lap, a chance for the drivers to get some virtual heat in virtual tyres. The Silverstone Grand Prix circuit is a fabulous challenge, whether you're in a single-seater or a GT car or a touring car. It is one the drivers love, and it is one very well recreated within a set of Corsa Competizione. So we are in for a fabulous race, especially given not only that jumbled grid, but also the pit stop, and also whatever, Ben, the weather is going to throw at us in this hour.
Yes, just 13 degrees track temperature and air temperature. That is very, very cold. It is clear. Well, no, it says it's clear, but it's actually overcast. No rain as such. These guys have been practicing for rainy conditions. They do each week have a test race before we get to the main event, and owing to the data that they picked up within that test race, they are expecting rain at some point, which means we'll have a proper pit stop. They'll have to come in, they'll have to change their tyres, and that will tick off the need to have a pit stop, but the timing of that will be vital. And I think so maybe we will not see early pit stops like we saw in previous rounds, and the drivers will be waiting for that moment, that rain to come, and if it doesn't come, then we'll just have late pit stops.
One of the things we discussed at Laguna Seca was why stop early, or why stop late? Well, we were discussing there, because the weather was good, that there was really no point in stopping late. It sometimes might get you out of traffic, but many drivers electing to stop early and get that out of the way. Here, if the weather conditions do change, there is a real point to stopping late, and that point is that you can go onto the correct set of tyres at the correct time. So the drivers, well, I suspect you're right, all be leaving it late, trying to second guess the weather, and when they do make the pit stop, try and combine that with, if necessary, a change onto the wet rubber. I've got to say, another big plus point of esports racing is this is the warmest I've ever been at Silverstone in November, Ben. It's got to be applauded.
Yes, I'm still in a very, very cold, heatless house, so I'm feeling as cold as they are at Silverstone today. At least it replicates what you experienced across the weekend.
Well, it does. We had a very sunny Saturday for British GT's final round. We had a rather foggy start and a chilly Sunday, but a great 3-hour race came out of that, as you would anticipate with a 37-strong field. We're in for a great race here as well, as we've been saying, this really jumbled grid. Now, of course, the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit has this twisty infield element. They go out of Village into the loop, and then the road opens up a little bit through Aintree, speed building all the time at this section, so that when you come onto Wellington Straight, actually this section these days in the majority of cars and categories quicker than the Hanger Straight, which always used to be the fastest part of Silverstone. In turn, at the end of this, you've got the heavy braking zone, and then the cars wiggle their way through the stadium, as it were, through Brooklands, Luffield, and into Woodcote Corner. So now, everybody getting themselves into the Noah's Ark 2x2 formation, ready for the rolling start. You see the Miami blue colours of the Laundry House team locking out one side of the grid, really. The first 3 rows on the outside all going the way of the Laundry House team, which takes its racing seriously, but only so far, really. It's a good tongue-in-cheek team, and we like that. Matthew Marsh, who we'll see in the second race, is their very industrious public relations manager, with, as I say, his tongue firmly planted in his cheek much of the time. So, get set. We are ready to go racing. It is round 3 of the GT World Challenge Asia Esports Championship presented by Tarmac Works. We're at Silverstone. It's cold. It's dry for the moment. It is the first of our 2 races. This for the Sim Stars. They come out of Woodcote Corner. We're set to go racing with Kelvin Chen in the purple livery on pole position, number 117 in the Porsche. And we wait then for the lights to blink to get the race underway. Mandatory pit stop, don't forget, as the cars now do accelerate away. Kelvin Chen makes the best start. There's also Kim looking to try to move up through from 3rd on the grid, but he can't quite muscle his way up on the inside line there. Philippa Boquida drops back in behind and then moves alongside the race leader. Outside line for Maggots and through into the lead goes Philippa Boquida. That was really brave stuff on cold tyres round the outside, going out of Maggots into Beckett's for the first time, Ben.
She had huge confidence in her car there, got better traction out of the first corner, out of Copse, and just slung-shot her way past. And Chen was happy to defend, and he's really not got that Porsche working at all, because now Kim comes past for second around the outside into Stowe, and he is being swept up. It was a surprise to see the Porsche that high up the field around Silverstone. It's not the better mark. The McLarens are way better, as are the Mercedes, and it was a very impressive effort to get him on the pole position, but it's going to take him a few more laps, I think, to get that car up to temperature. And just a reminder then, we are using the old pit lane rather than the new pit lane. Got me confused for a few seconds as to why we were gridding up on the old part of the circuit, as they do, of course, at the GT Asia, when GT World Europe, when they come to town.
That's absolutely the case, yes. Whoops, one running a little bit wide there. Ferris Stanley, I think that was in his Ferrari. So we have McLaren's 1 and 2 now. Don't forget, when we had the European equivalent here earlier on in the year, during the first lockdown, it was very much within the equivalent race for the sim racers. McLaren's that dominated, didn't they? So Silverstone and McLaren, certainly for esports context, does seem to be a good fit as the race leaders work their way down there towards Brooklands for the first time. So Philippa Boquida, the race leader, a challenge is made there by 889 and Dika Malana, the Mercedes, and now he is in the championship, second in the pro category. So he needs to be working his way forward here and banking points. He's just put himself up ahead of Andrew Lawrenson, winner last time out. So a good move that by Malana, and it may well prove to be crucial. But at the end of lap 1, not only is Philippa Boquida the leader, she is, of course, leading outright as an AM. So a really impressive qualifying and first lap, Ben.
Yeah, let's just remind everybody that everybody with a red marker is an AM, but that means they have had to qualify on a hot lap competition to get themselves into this race. If they finished in the top 5 the last race, they get an automatic qualifying spot, but the rest of them have to actually qualify. So a few names that you may not recognise from previous events that have managed to snuck their way in, many that have we see time and time again that have had to qualify, and this is a big pro battle, and Teresa going down the inside on Lawrenson, and Lawrenson getting muscled out the way. The Porsches are not working in the early part of this race.
They're not, and he's lost another place. Look, because up and past him as well went Zhang Yin, and another big dive there. Andrew Lawrenson in danger of losing another spot because Youngchan Kim in the Rapido Sim Racing pink McLaren, 6th in the Pro Championship, looks for a way by, can't do it. Andrew gets out his elbows there, says, oh no you don't, I've had enough of being overtaken. So the Porsche at least stands its ground there as he comes now right and left through Abbey up towards Farm. Or can he hang on to it? He's on the attack look to try to get alongside Charles Becerra on the inside line, but he's not going to be able to make that move as round the outside goes Yun Chang Kim, and he gets run out wide all over the curb. So what should have been a bid ends up losing him a bit of ground, but he's still alongside Lawrenson as they go into Aintree. Great battle between the two. The McLaren look on that tighter line just about comes out ahead, but only just.
It was Yang Zing who actually put Becerra offline into Abbey. That's why he was compromised all the way through into the middle loop and still side by side through Brooklands, and that gives Lawrenson the inside line here. McLaren can't go round the outside. Surely he tries, but needs to kind of concede that one and find another place to dive down the inside a bit later on, because really you've got to be super brave to overtake into Copse as well, and he's trying to have that overlap and again to the outside.
So down towards Copse Corner they go then. Some great battles have been going on. There you see Porsche versus McLaren as they round Copse and now sprint their way up into the Beckett's S's sequence of corners. Lawrenson comes under attack once again, but just about being able to stand his ground. The trouble here, though, of course, is that while he's defending, he's losing time net to Charles Becerra, who is still ahead of him, 7th overall. Now, Philippa Baquida, the race leader, is not escaping by much. He was only 0.4 of a second at that last timing point. It's McLaren's 1-2. Guming Kim there in second place. And Kelvin Chen, the best of the Porsches, may not have been a brilliant getaway, but I think now he's regrouped a little bit and seems to be not only settling into a rhythm, but coming back at Kim ahead of him for second spot.
Guyan King is not somebody who's making their name in this Asia series. It's somebody who we've known for quite a while in Assetto Corsa Competizione across international competitions, whether it be organised by Lamborghini or Ferrari. He's qualified and tried to in all of those. Don't worry too much about that guy in the background. That may well be a connection issue rather than him flying off the road. It might be him flying off the road. Let's have a look to see if Maulana is still there. No, he is, so that's all fine. Guillaume King, very, very, very competitive. A lot of these names, a lot of these drivers we are learning about in this Asia series because they haven't necessarily made their name on the international events that existed, primarily because they're just at the wrong time zone and these guys want to be sleeping when we're doing those races. But Kim is one that's a real commit and certainly flies the flag for Korea very, very well. Down to our championship leader, Long Li, is 19th at the moment, started in 24th position. So he's still got some work to do in a Mercedes, so he's got the right car underneath him. I've got Aslan just ahead of him. I think I saw a car peeling to the pits. We've had a very, very calm first part of the race, so no one really needing to pit in terms of damage, but that was Yap Lam Law heading to pit lane, and that must be one of our first stoppers. Now, if we do get rain later on in the race, that will mean he'll have to do at least 2 stops, not recommended. Looking down at the tail of the field, actually pretty clean getaway from our drivers. Copse not the easiest place to go side by side, but everyone managed to get through.
Yeah, just looking at all of this, we don't have our normal raft of early penalties that quite often we have had in previous races. So, yeah, you're right, they're all being very well behaved thus far. 53 minutes still on the clock as the cars dive down through Stoke Corner. Looking at 22, Bank Tanatip having a go there to try to get a place back, actually, because Ralahi in the Audi number 44 goes through. So Bank Tanatip drops back into 15th place at the end of Vale. Into Club Corner now, and the Audi just being able to stay ahead as they come through Club and make the run past the wing, the Silverstone wing, the Formula One pits. But Kelvin Chen, third in his Porsche, as I was saying earlier, just could be the man to watch now. He's hanging on to a class position of second, but also what can he do to fend off Carl Peterson? The Porsche quick in qualifying and trying to regroup. Mac Tanatin, in the meantime, tries to fight back, but if anything, he is now being caught, is he not? Because Avila Baha is behind him in the Bentley. Baha, one of 5 newcomers that we've got on the grid for this race. So you were talking earlier, Ben, about not having Joseph de Jesus on the grid for this race, but we've gained 5 newcomers even so.
Yep, and that's exactly through that hot lap competition. I suppose if you really want to commit to getting into a certain race, then you just put huge amounts of practice into either Spa-Francorchamps or Suzuka, as we've got coming up, and then you can be slightly faster than the other qualifiers that perhaps have been spending too much time focusing on every single race of this championship. So there are different ways to get yourself in and get yourself on television. And we're seeing that with 5 new people. Shame to have De Jesus missing, because he was a real star in the Charity Cup race and took the victory in that first race of the season as well. So for him to be missing is a bit of a shame. Mia Rose, we haven't really spoken about too much. She was a bit of a star in our last race, but right now dives to the pits at a 24th position. So not really showing the same pace that we saw in our previous round, but you know, different tracks suit different cars. So she gets a little green dot on her name, as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen there. That means she's completed her customary pit stop.
And of course, she'll get places back as others cycle through their stops later in the race. Her best result of the year is a 5th. Philippa Boquida, the race leader, a best of a 6th, and she's there ahead of everybody right now, as down towards the end of Vale, Bentley versus the Lexus squabble continues, and also on the back of that little group is Kin Long Lee, number 6. Now, what progress is he making? He is 19th now, up from 24th on the grid. Why is he significant? The answer is because he is the Pro Championship leader, and there worked contact, and that sends Nakib Aslan all sideways. Thankfully nobody strikes him, but Aslan there, bit of contact, and he is the one that comes off worst. But Kin Long Lee having an awful qualifying, and he's not making the progress he needs to thus far in the race either.
No, considering he's in a Mercedes, look at the leaderboard with Peterson, Maulana, Zeng, Thessera, all in Mercedes as well. Big old group of Mercedes, here they are, all fighting over, well, they could get themselves up to 4th position. So it is the car to have around here, but Longley's he's been consistent and he keeps out of trouble. And I think he may rise at the end of the race when others get involved with each other. Side by side into Cops, it's not advisable.
And who's going to be the big winner out of all of this? Up the curb goes number 5, Charles Thessera. Andrew Lawrenson comes up on his tail. A little bit of track limit abuse there, using all of the real estate, but Lawrenson is going to dive through at Maggots. That's the outside for the first part of Beckett's, and both get sideways. Charles Thessera hangs on to his place, and that was Andrew Lawrenson having to bail there, really, because there was no way, with the pair of them on the edge, they could run side by side through Beckett's. But that part of the circuit, whether it's in sim racing or the real world, remains the ultimate challenge around Silverstone. More evidence of it right there, as Lawrenson has to slot back in behind Charles Thessera. So, Kin Long Lee, now number 6, has served his pit stop, gets him out of the traffic. Could be a smart move, depending on what the weather does, Ben.
Yes, exactly. We keep hearing about rain, but so far it's not calm. It wasn't actually forecast. The game does give you an idea on the forecast for the next hour, and it wasn't forecast. It was just going to be overcast for the whole time, but who knows? What we do know is the track should increase in temperature if we don't get any rain, because it's only 9:30 in the morning, so temperatures should rise, and therefore we should get a bit more grip out of the tarmac as that does so. Still plenty of racing action to go, and here is Pedersen with Maulana and Zeng behind him, 3 seconds back from Chen and the lead battle, which is now 3 cars.
So Philippa Boquida is the leader, and that gap is still hovering around the 4/10 mark over Guillaume Kin. 3rd is Kelvin Chen. Carl Peterson is 4th, and Dika Maulana 5th, as you ride with Andrew Lawrenson 8th, staring at the back of Charles Thessera's Mercedes. Best that he's had is an 11th thus far. And in terms of the brands, like I said earlier on, McLaren, the dominant car out of the sim race that we had here, the real world race in the earlier European Championship, was a Bentley win. Right now, you've got to go a long way down the order to find a Bentley, but McLaren 1-2, mirroring what we saw earlier on in the year in the European Championship. Lawrenson out of Cop's corner then. He's on the power and makes the run now into the Beckett's S's once more. But Charles Thessera fending him off, dust kicked up. Brilliant representation of Silverstone's Grand Prix circuit this, and Lawrenson closing at the end of the Beckett's S's. Can he now, Ben, plan a move from the end of the Hanger Straight down to Stoke Corner?
Well, interesting, he's not going in the slipstream. He's keeping out in clear air, as Sarah very much defensive, heading down to Stone. Now takes the racing line and not being able to get past. But now you feel like the Porsche has got grip and is working better. It's taken a while to get it up to temperature because of the temperature of the tarmac and the air, but it does seem to be working better now.
So the Porsche bit by bit becoming a little bit more competitive as out of club corner goes Andrew Lawrenson, still mired down in 8th place. That said, he's 5th in his class, isn't he? Because you take 3 AMs out of that leaderboard and it's points per class, not your overall position. So it's not as bad as it could be for Lawrenson. And because we've got 46 minutes and change, we've got the pit stops to cycle through for most as well. The leading pit stopper at the moment outside that leading 23. Remember, championship leader number 6 Mercedes Kinlong Lee stopped earlier. Now Lawrenson, a good run out of Aintree here, right onto the back of Charles Teixeira. Is there going to be an opportunity for the Porsche to make a move? There's almost a gap to the inside. Lawrenson goes wide. The outside for Brooklands translates to the inside for Luffield, but he wasn't able to stay alongside. Has to cede the place. Tucks back in behind the Mercedes once more. You get the feeling now that Porsche is being held up, don't you? Because the intent is there. Yeah, he needs to find a way by, but Lawrenson now possibly being held up. Charles Teixeira, the cork in the bottle.
Yeah, and Teixeira is defending so much that he's compromising his own pace as well. So he may be worth just letting Lawrenson past and then following so that they can get onto the tail of the cars that a couple of laps ago Teixeira was battling with. He's just, you know, when we've got a 45-minute race still to go, yes, if we're in a 20-minute sprint, perhaps it's the right way to go, being so defensive. But Teixeira is messy. He's offline sometimes. And therefore, his pace is nowhere near what it could be if he was just concentrating on what's going on ahead of him.
Something else that's happening as well is that the top 3 have now really shaken off Carl Peterson, the man in 4th place. Just see Peterson heading this battle pack of Malana and Zheng. Small gap back to Teixeira, who's now lost that place to Lawrenson, so Lawrenson goes 7th. But Bakwida, Kim and Chen, the top 3, have escaped by over 3 seconds now over Carl Peterson in 4th. But Lawrenson finally has done it. He's finally got past Charles Teixeira. And not only that, but straight away, he's pulling clear, isn't he? So now Lawrenson, with 45 minutes effectively still to go, is on a mission. We have a spin as well, I thought I saw a moment ago, going through Village. Go on, Ben.
Oh yes, we've lost Bakwida. She's no longer in the lead of the race. So this is our new leader, Gyun Kim, with Chen behind. Where has Bakwida gone? Oh, she's in a 5th spot now and about to be mobbed by the rest of the Mercedes. So she was the spinner, David.
Okay, so spotted something going the wrong way, and Philippa Bakwida is losing another spot possibly there because Yin Zheng goes through. So that means that Guiman Kim is the leader, but look at Kelvin Chen. It may not have been the best opening lap of the race of anybody at Silverstone, but Kelvin Chen now is taking the battle to the McLaren. Porsche's also qualified well here in the European equivalent back in April, so now rounding Copse Corner there. Guiman Kim is the leader. The McLaren, though, only 3/10 up on Kelvin Chen. And not only that, there are back markers up the road for them to worry about now.
Yeah, and those back markers will be the slightly slower drivers that have pitted because generally the sim field is so tight in terms of time. As Charles Teixeira, again, keeps saying it, very, very messy, especially through Maggots and Beckett's offline. And he managed to hook up the last part there, but he was offline beforehand. It is not an easy section because as soon as you go slightly offline in one part, then you're offline for all of it, and you really have to back out the throttle and lose a chunk of time.
I understand that there was contact between Philippa Bakwida and Guiman Kim, so it might be that story is not yet over. Kim leads on the road, but there may well be a discussion post-race as Carl Peterson gets mugged there, bit of hit and shoulder by Yin Zheng, 94 Mercedes that gets up the inside. Philippa Bakwida busy trying to defend from Andrew Lawrenson, so all of a sudden, because you've seen Andika Maulana go through, Carl Peterson has lost another place, and now coming under attack from Bakwida, from Lawrenson, et al. As they come up towards Village. That's Charles Teixeira trying to get back on the inside of Zhen. This was the pinch point a lap ago that did for Philippa Bakwida. And now the Mercedes are rubbing contact against one another door to door. Treble 9 there. Ryan Houlihan, the Australian, is next in the queue. But this ain't over yet by a long chalk, is it?
And again, it's all about momentum. Jeopardise your momentum at one part of the circuit, and you're jeopardised by a good few corners. Now Teixeira looks to the inside, nearly has 3 wide going to Brooklands. And if Zheng can just hold on around the outside in Brooklands, he's got the inside line for Luffield. Yes, just about keeps the overlap. But we've got a spinner there from the Porsche ahead, and that splits the 2 of them. And that's Lawrenson who's made a mistake.
Yeah, very slow indeed. One Bales in the background for the pits. We'll come to him in a moment as the battle pack now for what is this? 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th. Pours across the line, but Andrew Lawrenson, having gained ground a lap ago, has now squandered that by an error seemingly going through Luffield. So that puts Lawrenson back down into 7th place. Kim leads Chen, and that gap has just crept up a little bit. But now Andika Maulana, second in the Pro Championship. He could well be the man to watch now. Maulana with a best result this year of a 3rd place, but he's really pushing hard as you're on board with Ryan Houlihan. 9th, Charles Teixeira is ahead of him. You're on board the 999 McLaren.
Down into Stowe then. And side by side, Teixeira dives up the inside of Lawrenson and puts Lawrenson off on the outside line. He's just will have the inside, or chooses against having the inside. He's really lost momentum again. And so now it's the McLaren of Houlihan diving to the inside. That doesn't work out for him, but could try the switchback. And again, it's Teixeira at the head of the field now, but he's the one that seems to be scrappy and seems to be struggling. So let's now see if they can all just settle down a little bit. Kim leads Chen by a second. Then there's a 4-second gap to Maulana, who's on his own. Pedersen is 1.5 back, but was leading this train that we were seeing earlier. She just needs to get her head down now. She's got the ability to be right up at the head of the field. She's got clear air ahead of her, and so as long as she's not challenged too much, that would be the way forward.
And the reason that she'd lost the lead, I've just had a photograph sent to me of it. It wasn't Kim getting up the inside. He just ran into the back, going late braking into Village, and that was enough to tag the back of the car, unsettle Philippa Boquida, and turn her around. So it was front-to-back contact, not trying to get up the inside. As you see Lawrenson on the attack of Charles Teixeira. We've been here before with Andrew Lawrenson. It took him a while. Finally did. He made the sprint away only. Make that mistake and lose the time. So past the pits they come. Down to Copse Corner. Lead gap still hovering around the 7/10 of a second mark as the field now accelerates out of Copse Corner. But it is William Kim ahead of Kelvin Chen. And Dika Maulana then set to perhaps take over the lead of the championship provisionally 3rd, but he's not really closing significantly on the top 2.
And we've got a 10-second penalty for the 55 car. So Guillaume King being deemed to be responsible for that collision with Boquida. 10-second penalty will be coming their way. That will be displayed on the timing screen once the race director inputs it into the timing. All the other ones that come up kind of automatically are done inside limits and things like that. Amazing, actually, to see how good these drivers are being with track limits, because we've not seen any penalties for the start race procedure, and we haven't seen anybody being penalised for gaining an advantage. And the game is very well equipped for calculating if you gain an advantage by running off the track. So you can do like that and get 4 wheels off the circuit. If the game thinks you've benefited too much by it, it'll give you a penalty. It'll give you a warning a couple of times before that, but it's a much nicer system than we find in other platforms, where as soon as you put 4 wheels off, you get instantly a slowdown or instantly a penalty point.
One of the many newcomers we touched on earlier on there, you're looking at Timo Iskander, the privateer with the Porsche. First time out for him in the championship, and Iskander running in 18th place at the moment. Now, just going back to that 10-second penalty, it's reflected on the graphic as you see Andrew Lawrenson just making his move to the outside of Charles Teixeira. Let's just cover this off and see whether it works. No, it doesn't. Lawrenson slots back in behind as they go to Luffield, gets a faceful of Mercedes once again. Is that penalty, Ben, going to be applied in the pit stop or as a penalty post-race?
I think you can take it as an option in the pit stop, so you can sit there for an extra 10 seconds.
Right.
Or if you don't have a pit stop left, then it will be added to your time. So we should be able to clear that, knowing that most cars have yet to pit.
Indeed so. We need to find out where our erstwhile championship leader is as well out of all of this, don't we? Kin Long Lee. He's not within that leading 23 at the moment on the graphic. As you see, Andrew Lawrenson still stuck behind Charles Teixeira. He's had enough of staring at the back of him. Ryan Houlihan is there behind him in 9th place. Ferris Stanley is in 10th spot now. As up front, it is Kim, the notional leader. But Kelvin Chen effectively is going to inherit that lead. But look at what is happening behind him. Maulana, little by little, is closing on Kelvin Chen. So I reckon after the pit stops, we are going to have a really good fight between Chen and Maulana for the race win here.
and Kinlon Lee down in 25th position. So there you can see, just checking in. Nice clear air, able to get his head down. Make sure that he gets good pace out of the car. Left a lot, not troubling too much by fighting on track, as we've spoken about before. That really means that you can lose a lot of time if you're having to place your car on a defensive line. And maybe this will be Long Lee's benefit again. Good with strategy over the 2 races. He's been consistent and kept out of trouble. And at the moment, he's the second car that have pitted. You can see all the green marks mean those that have taken their compulsory pit stops.
Yeah.
Terry Rayton also in the Lamborghini. He's a star in the AM field, and he's also taken his pit stop. As I say, Maya Rose was another one that we talked about quite a bit. And Hakimi's down there in 37th, just off the tiny screens, but having a struggle, Mika Hakimi, because he's been another one that's been in the top 10 in our first 2 races of the season.
There is 909, that is Mia Rose, and the Australian lady with the Aston Martin comes out of club corner, chasing the Ferrari of Scott Blair just up the road. And Scott Blair has had a 10th as his best. Just going back to Kinlong Lee for a moment, championship leader. It's not really by being the fastest driver, but certainly 2 good consistent results. A 5th and a 6th have really helped. There is Mia Rose then. And although she pitted early, that's not necessarily been to her advantage because she's a long way down of the stoppers. Remember, if it's that little green block within the graphic, they've made a pit stop and you can see how many greens there are ahead of us. So not going as well on pure pace as at Laguna Seca last time out, is she? Battle on still. Andrew Lawrenson on the tail of Charles Vesserac here, coming out of Stowe Corner, wide over the curb and down to Vale. The end of it. Is this going to be a chance for Lawrenson to make his move? Not there, it's not. Again, that Mercedes, Ben, just acts as the cork in the bottle, doesn't it? And try as he might, Lawrenson just can't prise open the door. Porsche goes out of farm, then up now towards Village, closing under braking, and also Andrew Lawrenson has got to be careful out of all of this that he doesn't get stuck there and he's caught by Ryan Houlihan, who is next in the queue. Again, he's really toey coming up through the loop, goes out wide, and we've got a car in trouble. That's a lapped Nissan getting out of the way as much as having a problem, so nothing to panic about. But look at the McLaren of Houlihan. He's having a very good lap here now and bringing down that gap. Is he going to make a move? Yes, he is. Pulls out, has a look, brakes late. Not late enough, though. So Andrew Lawrenson hangs on to the position as they come through Brooklands, up now towards Luffield. So out front, 13 laps for Ryung Kim. He is the race leader, and he's getting away from Kelvin Chen, but it's really the gap between Chen and Maulana we need to be looking at second and third, because of course they're the notional 1 and 2, with Kim, the leader on the road, being penalised. On board with Houlihan and recreating exactly what you have in the real world. You've got that video camera at the back of the car as a mirror. You can see the onboard, you can see what's going on behind him as he threads his way now up through the Beckett's S's box again here. On power, the dust kicks up ahead, and now the cars accelerate their way down, hanger straight. So Ron Houlihan, good through the twiddly bit, good through the corners, but the Porsche seemingly with the advantage in a straight line.
Yeah, lovely view on board. Of course, all those zeros that you see in the dashboard, they would usually be filled with numbers for the driver, so he can see exactly what the temperature and the pressure of each of the tyres is. That's really useful information for him, because I think we spoke about it quite a bit in the last round. Keeping the tyres within a window, they can go too hot and therefore lose grip, as well as being too cold and losing grip. And so that information of exactly how much pressure is in each tyre works out really well. Push the tyre too hard, get it sliding, overheat, overpressure the tyre, you lose pace in the car. You might be doing exactly the same thing. You might be braking in the same places, turning in the same places, but the car is not reacting in the same way.
Now there, number 44 Audi goes through. Solofonorina Raleigh in the BMR Racing Team car, Madagascar, as she turns into Brooklands. Now, Kim leading gap coming down once again. Maulana is not hacking away at Chen's advantage. and Audis that we saw going quite well in free practice. The best of them, only 11th at the moment. Raleigh coming into Woodcote, having had that earlier battle with Bank Tanatip. That's Andrew Lawrenson going through, and he still hasn't been able to get past Thesera. It does show, Ben, how the balance of performance works, because the Mercedes and the Porsche, with their strengths and weaknesses at different parts of the circuit, have been together in this battle pretty much race long.
Yeah, absolutely. And remember that in the European Series, we had that success ballast for, I think it was the top 3 of each category. So that kind of changed how the different brands work, punishing certain brands after success in certain other races. But we don't have that in the Asian Series, and therefore we really get a chance to see just how good the SRO balance of performance is, the real world balance of performance, that is then inputted into the game. And I don't think that our competition organiser AK Informatica has actually done any extra BOP. I think it's all thanks to the real world being translated into this virtual.
Well, Andrew Lawrenson, I suspect, will be rather hoping there was a bit more weight, for example, in the Mercedes, because he's running out of ideas of how to get past Charles Thesera now. The best that Charles has had this year is an 11th, even though he always seems to have been within that leading group early on. He seems to wilt late race, and maybe that will happen again here. Lawrenson, good out of farm, goes to the outside line on the approach to Village. Then that little burst of acceleration squirts the car up towards the loop, but no opportunity to get through on the inside, and actually gives the curbing a big old whack there on the inside line. So we're approaching the halfway point.
And if you do that, David, you do have the risk of damaging your car, especially around Silverstone, where you've got these big sausage curbs. Just like in real life, you have the opportunity, potential, to damage the suspension. If you damage the suspension, then you'll put more wear through the tyre, potentially even to a point of a puncture. So you need to be really careful not to hit those particularly aggressive curbs.
So we saw that in the British GT 3R race just a couple of days ago. Beckett's S's late race, somebody gave the curb a big old wallop, and it then had to stop Apple curve, and it was almost as though it had affected sensors and given the car a panic attack. It had to be reset and rejoin the race. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Those curbs can do damage in the real world, just as they can in the virtual championship. Right, Kim still leading, but with that Damocletian penalty set to really upset his race, and none of our leading, 16 have yet served that pit stop, so they're all perhaps planning on doing it at the last possible moment. If they all come in the last couple of laps, it's going to be a real harum-scarum dash the flag, isn't it?
Yeah, and I don't think, looking at the weather, it's getting slightly warmer. Track temperature's up to 16 degrees now, with air at 13 as it was at the start of the race. It says cloudy, it stayed cloudy, but there doesn't seem to be any evidence of rain. So they might be hanging on for rain for no reason in the end. And actually, it'd be good to somehow get out of these battles, because Lawrenson is being held up, and now he's being hassled by the McLaren as well, trying to go around the outside.
That's Ryan Houlihan, who has been closing. There's also the Ferrari there of Ferry Stanley up behind them, and actually Stanley attacking Houlihan might be Lawrenson's chance to escape here, because the Ferrari tries to get up the inside of the McLaren, can't do it. Houlihan has to go defensive. All of this for 8th, 9th, 10th and 11th places. But look, as soon as they've started to squabble like that, so Charles Thesera has got away, and Philippa Baquida 5th then at the expense of Yin Zhang here. So early leader Baquida still staying within that leading group despite that spin. So actually, it could have been a whole lot worse, couldn't it?
Yeah, and she probably didn't pick up that much damage. If it was that basically Kim got on the throttle a bit earlier on, as now Ferris Stanley being hassled by an Audi. That's Riley disappearing at stage right. I think that was a legitimate disappear rather than a connection issue, so losing a bit of time. And yeah, if it was just on the acceleration out of the corner and that Kim got on the accelerator before Baquida, there shouldn't be too much damage to her car, and therefore she should be able to run pretty well, as Lawrenson now comes into the pit. So I was kind of halfway through that sentence, saying he just needs to get himself out of the trouble and get some clear air, and he's done exactly that.
So Lawrenson in from, where was he, 8th. So that really is our leading stopper. Going to be interesting now to see where he rejoins relative to Kin Long Lee, because he is 22nd. So currently the best of the stoppers, the championship leader from Pro. So it'll take a lap or so just to unravel all of this and see where Lawrenson is going to be able to feed back in, as there Yin Zhang, number 94 Mercedes, pushes on in pursuit of Baquida, but that gap has crept up only ever so slightly to the eye, but just a little. And look, Lawrenson then, as he rejoins, is dropping down the order. So it's 9-11 there relative to Mercedes 6 that we need to be looking for. And where is Andrew Lawrenson? Well, there goes Terry Rayton up and past him, does he not, in number 91. Well, I reckon that's going to put Kinlong-Lee ahead of Andrew Lawrenson and put Mercedes as the best of the stoppers.
And there we go, intelligent work from Kinlong-Lee. Just that clear track, lap after lap, has allowed him so much of an advantage. Lawrenson's come into the pits from P8 and not that far off P1, to be honest. Where is P8 right now? Probably 10-12 seconds. And he's fallen into third position behind Rayton, behind Long-Lee. So these guys are in contention for a top 5 easily, and considering Long-Lee started 24th and really wasn't making up ground, strategy has been key here.
Terry Rayton, who was another early stopper, gets ahead of Andrew Lawrenson, doesn't he? So the drivers that pitted early got themselves out of traffic and benefited. Lawrenson, yes, he was up in 8th place and it all seemed good. Now he makes his move against his teammate Terry Rayton, coming into the right-hander of Village.
Lawrenson down the inside and takes the position, nice and clean. The two drivers working from the same team, practicing on the same servers, bit of respect. And of course, whilst there's no vision for Terry Rayton to know exactly what's going on the inside, he will get an audio and kind of a radar to show that there's a car down the inside. He'll know it's his teammate as well, so he didn't really fight that one. Lawrenson now needs to get his head down because he's got some work to do. 3.2 seconds behind Long-Lee in a battle for the championship. Keen to see when the next group of drivers decide to pit, because they probably won't be able to see on their heads-up display where Lawrenson came back into the pack because he's so far back. You only get to see the 5 or 6 cars around you, and so they won't know that actually he's come in 3 cars back from the leading pit-er, and actually these guys need to pit rather than fight.
So there is Kinlong-Lee then, best of the stoppers, more evidence that getting the stops done early gets you into clear air, and therefore you are better placed late race. So Andrew Lawrenson, as an example, stayed out but had race-long battles that cost him time. So Kinlong-Lee, as Ben said earlier, playing that strategy well, that very smartly liveried Waco's flip table racing Mercedes of the Hong Kong driver comes now up through Club Corner, and he's going to gain a whole heap more places as others pit. Now, of course, he's getting himself onto the back of the slower cars that haven't yet stopped. So life's about to change a little bit for him, isn't it? Because now he's in genuine battles with cars that are slower than him, but he's got to find a way past, because even though they have a pit stop due, they don't want to give up places easily.
No, exactly. Although some of these guys further back should be pretty easy picking for him. Such is the pace for Kinlong-Lee right now. That's a Nissan ahead of him, is really running quite a lot slower, and that's where the lights flashing comes in. Works in the real world, still convinced it doesn't work at all in the virtual world, because you don't get the glare from the mirrors glaring into your eyes, and it's just a kind of a, I'm here, would you move out the way? Of course you're not going to move out the way, you're in a race.
It was described on Sunday by McLaren factory driver Joe Osborne as the stress button. So when you got stuck there for a while and you're running out of ideas and you start to get all antsy, then you start flashing the lights. So the stress button, it became dubbed as. There is Kinlong-Lee. He's stuck behind Isaac Norman's Nissan. Now, Isaac Norman's better result out of the two is a 21st place. So that gives you an idea that, okay, he's 19th on the road. He's kind of in his normal habitat, but that is not regularly as quick a driver as Lee, who is stuck behind him. But now you've got 2 real grunt-and-go cars here, the front-engine Nissan, the front-engine Mercedes running together, and Lee looking for a way by. And he's got to be good about this, got to be quick, because look who is behind him. Lawrenson in the Porsche is inching up onto the back of him. And, of course, Lawrenson should be quicker. He out-qualified the Mercedes. Lee, with his elbows out, goes through, yes, gets the place at Stowe. But Andrew Lawrenson, quicker in qualifying, ran higher in the earlier stint. He's the next man charging along behind and bringing down that gap to the Mercedes.
Now, what these drivers may have set up is an audio warning when there's a car alongside you. And so even if you just just get your nose alongside the other car, like Ferris has right now, he'll get the other driver will get an audio warning to say there's a car alongside, and because you can't turn your head to look, you don't know how far alongside they are, so you do try to avoid an accident by kind of turning away from the car up the inside of them, and that's exactly what happened there to Ryan Houlihan, who had, probably in the real world, every right to just turn in on the guy on the inside of him. But look how respectful they are, giving him lots and lots of room, and they run side by side for corners. In the real world, you just wouldn't do that. But again, coming into Maggots and Beckett's, they're still side by side. Oh, the Ferraris lost it. They both go all over the place. Yeah, almost more respect in the world of sim racing for side by side than you have in the real world, because you don't have that spotter in the real world like we do in the virtual.
Yeah, Ferris Stanley got sideways in the Ferrari, didn't he? Ryan Houlihan off the road and has lost the place. I wonder whether he gave that up, thinking, well, I did miss a bit of Beckett's and I've gained the place. Maybe I should give that back rather than get any penalty, because he was off the road and did gain an advantage. Have a look also at this gap bend between Chen and Maulana, second and third on the road, but really 1 and 2 in the race because of Kim's penalty. The gap has come down a little bit more. It's not been slashed by Maulana, but from over 4 seconds about 15 minutes ago, 20 minutes ago, it has come down to 2.3 seconds. So little by little, Maulana, 889 Mercedes, up from the third row of the grid, is catching the man that started on pole position.
So last lap, Kim Young King did a 59.4, Kelvin Chen did a 59.0, Maulana did a 58.2, which is similar to what Kin Long Lee is doing further back, and Andrew Lawrenson. So you really want to be in the 58s if you're going to be competing, and you know, that is a second loss, bang, like that, from that one lap. Perhaps it's traffic, perhaps that's the reason why they're lapping slightly slower, but on a completely different part of the track, you've got guys that are now running with the ability, perhaps, to challenge for victory, and actually, looking at the timing screens, Danatip in the Lamborghini has got himself up into second spot, virtually, in those that have pitted, ahead of Lawrenson. So that's a little battle going on.
Yes, I was about to query that, because I would have thought that Tanatip, who was a relatively recent stopper, was going to be lower down. But no, you're right, he is there ahead of Andrew Lawrenson, but only just. But what is interesting as well is that Charles Thesera, for example, who pitted last time, has fallen completely out of that top 23. The point being that those that stopped earlier do seem to be now having an advantage. Now into the pits has just come Young Chan Kim, also now in is Sai Prithvi, McLaren's both, but those drivers that are stopping now out of the leading dozen do seem to fall a long way down the order. So what is this going to do to the Kim Chen Maulana group, for example? There is the Tanatip Lawrenson fight. 16th place overall. Bank Tanatip in the Lamborghini goes through, hangs onto the place. The Katana Motorsport entry keeps the Laundry House Porsche at bay, but only just. We know that Lawrenson is quick and he's all over the back of Bank Tanatip now.
We've also got a drive-through penalty for Young Chan Kim, who I think is taking that right now. No, he's just come out of the pits. So that must be speeding in pit lane that's been given to him by the game. And so he's going to have to do another pit stop. That's going to take him well out of contention. And I think he may well have been... actually, he's falling down the timing order now, so he wasn't that far up. But that's a shame that he'll have to do 2 pit stops rather than 1.
Yeah, those... drivers that are pitting, we need to keep an eye to, because of course you come into the pits just at the timing line, but the next timing point after your pit stop, as there Lawrenson does go past Tanatip at Club Corner, is where you're going to get your real position, if you like, pit exit, so you drop down. So we need to sort of wait for the next timing point before we get that true situation. Lawrenson then, just like we saw earlier with Thesera, when he finally found a way past, he streaks clear instantly. So Andrew Lawrenson, when he's in clear air, is very quick indeed, but can he now do enough to get onto terms with Kin Long Lee? Because it's quite a big gap. You see the Mercedes a long way up the road now, 13th place overall. Maulana getting ever closer to Kelvin Chen for second place, which is going to be the race lead battle between the two of them. Here the leading cars are, and it is just at the moment Kim ahead of Chen. That's only half a second, and bear in mind the leader, Ben, has got that 10-second penalty to serve.
Yeah, exactly. So I think he might still grab himself a top 5 when everything shakes out, depending on how close everything is. When we have the pit stops, Long Lee is now 4.2 seconds ahead of Lawrenson, so there's a big old gap that all of these guys that haven't pitted, the top 12, could slot themselves into once they decide to take their pit stop. Still waiting for those with 17 minutes remaining. I think more and more now, there's not much point in waiting for the rain. Or there's less of an advantage, perhaps, for the guys at the head of the field. If they are able to keep this pace up, keep matching the pace of the guys further back, all well and good. But look, Lawrenson on that last lap, making a pass, did a 2-minute lap. That's nearly 2 seconds slower than where he really needs to be. So it just proves how much traffic is making a difference when usually these guys are on a qualifying lap within a tenth or two of each other.
It's interesting as well to see how the Porsches kind of are coming good later in the race. Yes, they were good in qualifying, but Kelvin Chen didn't make a brilliant first lap, but he and Lawrenson, for example, both getting faster, it seems, as the race wears on. But of course, Kelvin Chen has got to make a pit stop. He is stuck behind Guillaume Kim, and Dika Maulana is there. Now, into the pits comes Kim, so the leader is in this time. There is Kelvin Chen, who now takes over the race lead, and we'll see what that is going to do to the driver that did have the race lead as 390 BMW goes through. Yatlam Law, another of the Waco's flip table cars. He's just got up past Bank Panatip, has he not? Yes, so that is Law, who's made his pit stop, gaining places on the track and, of course, on the proper race result.
It's a shame that we don't get more information out of the pits, because something has artificially put Panatip out of position for me. He shouldn't be this high up, and the pace of the guys around him shows that actually he is slightly struggling to keep up with the pace. I wonder whether people are doing something with tyres in a way that he did not. It's very difficult to know. We haven't actually seen anybody making a pit stop, and you don't have mechanics jumping out with tyres in hand. So it is a bit tricky to understand, but certainly he feels to me as though he's artificially high up. Here is Guillaume King, our one-time leader, having served his 10-second penalty and his compulsory pit stop. Is he still in a... Yeah, he is still in the lead of the race, ahead of King Long Lee.
He is, but then...
Yes.
Well, for the moment, he should be. Let's just see. He was a long, long way ahead anyway, wasn't he, before the pit stop? So even allowing for the 10 seconds, he should still be clear. But let's just wait and see at the next sector point. Yes, there he is. So only by a little, but Kim is the best of the stoppers. But the fascination is where Kelvin Chen and Andika Maulana will feed in relative to him. They should be ahead, of course, unless they have a really bad pit stop, because they will be 10 seconds quicker in the pits, as will others.
Yes, exactly. So that really then leans to the front 3 that haven't pitted right now, coming out of the pits as the front 3 that have pitted as well. More of a question mark over where Pedersen and Bokida slot in, being 4.5 seconds back from those leading contenders. But Guillaume Kim, in theory, should have sat 10 seconds more in the pits than the others will be able to achieve. Yeah. If they are not doing anything to service the car, like adding fuel or changing tyres, which there shouldn't be a need to. This pit stop thing is more of a strategic bit of fun for us than actually a functional thing for the cars. We haven't really needed at any of the races we've had so far to add fuel or to change tyres, but maybe the front tyres are taking a bit more of a pounding because of the low temperatures and because of the sliding. The left front takes a lot of bashing around Silverstone, and maybe some people have decided to change the front tyres because of that and give them a bit more pace come the end of the race. Well, I'll keep an eye on the times and see if we get some really good lap times as Bokida now comes out.
That's right, so she has served her mandatory stop, and does that put her ahead of Kim? It, in a sense, should do. Yes, I think it has, like because of course that penalty was put there because of the contact between them, and in theory to right that wrong, so Kim should drop now behind Philippa Bokida. So that puts her as the best of the stoppers, doesn't it, for the moment, into what you might call a class lead. We still need to see where Chen and Maulana blend back in relative to her, because she was behind them anyway. But right now, Philippa Bokida for Laundry House in the McLaren, 326 the number on the car. That is the best of those that have served a stop from the penalised Kim, and then Kim Long Lee, third of those that served a stop. And of course, he was a very early pit stopper.
Shows how much Lawrenson lost by squabbling, really, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Because he came and he was with these guys at one point, but with so much kind of defensive work from Teixeira, for instance, and Teixeira has pitted and he's even further behind. So they really did lose a huge amount. He should have just come into the pits early doors, cleared the traffic, get his head down and bang in some hot laps. But it hasn't worked out for him. And again, that early stop from King Long Lee is definitely elevated him up from where he started the race in 24th spot.
Now this is for the race lead, but also these are two different class leaders. Kelvin Chen, yet to stop in the Porsche, leads. Andika Maulana, yet to stop in the Mercedes. It is an AM leading the race. It is a Pro in second. Now, yes, everybody wants to win, but if Maulana were really savvy about this, he might not feel the need to really force the issue and just take the maximum points in his class. That said, he does tee up to have a go on the inside heading into Stoke Corner. Ben, we've only got 12 minutes to go here, so they're not far away from having to serve that pit stop. And is this battle going to be rejoined after it, or are they going to settle for class honours, do you think?
Well, we may be talking about the undercut and overcut here. If Maulana comes into the pits and kind of catches the Porsche off guard, he may come out and have some clear air to bang in one lap, which would be enough to then get him past the Porsche. But certain parts of the circuit, that Porsche looks really, really good. It looks slightly loose through the faster corners, but is able to carry more momentum than the Mercedes, that's for sure.
So this is between the car that started on pole and the car that qualified fifth, and it could be that we have our second outright win for an AM, because that's what Carl Peterson achieved against expectation at Monza. And it is what Kelvin Chen is doing here by being the race leader, and he's maintaining the advantage as the Porsche howls its way down to Brooklands. You're looking back from the Porsche, forwards here from the Mercedes. Andika Maulana rides the curb then and closes up a little bit more onto the tail of the 911 as they come through Luffield. Now he's either going to go for the pits this time. No for Chen, no for Maulana. They're so wrapped up in their battle, they're staying out there, but now Maulana does make his move for the race lead. Down towards Copse Corner on the inside, but Ben, by squabbling, they're holding themselves up. Maulana has done it and gone through, but have they wasted too much time by having that battle, do you think?
Lap times were good, 58s, both of them, 58.2 for Maulana, and their pass was pretty clean considering they're going side by side into Copse. So Maulana now, head down, make sure you don't lose, actually didn't really lose much time at all. It looks to be 4 to 5 tenths of a second through the first part of the lap. Kelvin Chen 1 second slower than he was on his average time. So now Maulana, as long as Chen doesn't throw it down the inside unnecessarily, can at least get his head down maybe for 1 or 2 more laps and then finally pit. Or Chen comes into the pits. He doesn't seem like he's being held up though, does he? He's not close enough. I don't think that Porsche's got the pace of the Mercedes at this late part of the race.
Interesting, isn't it? Because a while ago we thought Porsches were coming on stronger as the race wore on. Now, yes, Chen has dropped back, and Maulana, it's taken him a long, long time, almost 50 minutes to hit the front, hasn't it? It's only now that he's chipped and chipped and chipped away and been able to do it. So is it the Porsche wilting? Is it Maulana just being able to up his pace towards the very end? And, of course, what's going to happen after the pit stop? Look behind them, there's Carl Peterson third, and he has yet to stop. Where is the leading stopper? It is still Philippa Baquida, but Guion Kim chasing on behind. So that battle is not yet resolved, and the championship leader, Kin Long Lee, number 6 Mercedes, we need to see as well, because Long Lee going for class points, still not a winner this year, but ultra consistent into the last 9 minutes. Does the pit lane beckon now for either Chen, having lost his lead, or Maulana that's taken it? Chen suggesting he's going to come in this time, maybe on that tighter line. Let's see, does he bail right for the pit lane? No, stays out. Surprisingly this, that they are both going as long into the race as they are.
Yeah, I think if I was Chen, having lost the lead of the race, I think I would reset myself by taking that pit stop, placing myself in a different part of the track, and then maybe being able to at least hold track position against my other rivals. But at the moment, he is very much in a different spot. Now, we talked about Bank Tanatip being artificially, we felt, out of position. He's about the only person on track that is faster than his kind of average time. So whatever he did in the pit stop, and I thought it was a fast pit stop, but he's able to match his best laps, basically. That's how my timing screen works. It kind of predicts the lap time as opposed to compare to the average lap time that he's doing. Nice clear track though for Andika Maulana. No people ahead of him to slow him down. You got a little bit of information from his dashboard there. Traction control and ABS set to 3, so asking a little bit of help. Also map 2. Now that is interesting. Not something that anybody informed me of, but they are not running at full fuel usage, which means they did in the Mercedes need to save a little bit of fuel, and maybe they didn't need to in the Lamborghini, and therefore the Lamborghini didn't need to take as much fuel. But certainly fuel was a question mark for this hour race around Silverstone.
And is that why Maulana perhaps taken his time to hit the front, but he was being a little bit more conservative early on?
Yeah, exactly. Sitting in the slipstream, lifting and coasting a little bit would have saved a decent amount of fuel. He'll have knowledge of exactly how much fuel he still has in the car. We can't see it because that would be kind of unfair to the rest of the rivals. But very interesting that he's got map 2 on, and that does mean that he wasn't able to, or didn't feel like he could run map 1 for the full race and have all the fuel. Still though, the two of them continue to rotate. We've still got 4 cars that have yet to make a pit stop.
Another good little battle going on here. 555 is Nigel Chua. He's 15th in the Lamborghini, the blue and yellow Lamborghini. The best that he's done this year is a 22nd place, so looking as though he's on for a better result. He's also crawling all over the back of Naki Aslan, 7th in the Pro Championship here in the Lexus. So breaking hard Nigel Chua, who in turn has then got Ryan Adisuputra in the Aston Martin behind, trying to go to the outside line. There is... Hasn't it, Ben? Something goes wrong for Teixeira in the closing stages of every race. He pitted late, and that's dropped him down the order. So having been in that leading 10 early doors, yet again, he's fallen a long way down.
Our PR executive is being very excited by how accurate this is relating to what you saw at the weekend, with the fuel mileage of the Mercedes not as good as the more slippery Lamborghini or the McLarens. I think maybe Teixeira ran map 1 and then decided to put some fuel in during the pit stop, which then would artificially throw you, well, not artificially, would mean you lose time in the pits. He may be running full chat, but taken some fuel. So an interesting game that I didn't realise we were going to be playing, with a bit of fuel conservation, and certainly affecting some cars better than others. And there is Teixeira in the Mercedes, the Motul sponsored machine. Wasn't particularly fast, to be fair, in the opening stint though, was he? He was a bit of a rolling roadblock.
He was. I mean, he was in that leading 10 or so, but yeah, every time we saw, for example, Andrew Lawrenson get past him, he lost time. There's the leader, there's second, coming down the pit lane then. So the top 2 both come into the pits. Mandatory stops to be served. Now, are we going to see anything here, Ben, or is it all in-game that we can unravel what, if anything, the drivers have to do?
Well, the difficult thing is they're not going to take tyres, and that's the only visual thing you'll see. The cars would go up in the air if they were taking tyres, and well, there you go. That's as quick as it needs to be. So they were stationary for longer than I'd expect. Considering didn't need anything being done, so maybe there was a little bit of a couple more litres of fuel being taken for this race, and some people taking more than others. And did they not back out onto circuit?
Did they not both go up in the air, or was I imagining that?
They bump, and that is kind of a reset to allow you to go out.
Oh, I see.
If they'd gone up in the air for a long time, that would be a tyre change. But they kind of jump.
I'm with you. Right, okay, so that's the reset. Right, so back on track, and that's going to put Carl Peterson into the lead of the race Pro 10. Of the 2, then, it remains, does it? Andika Maulana ahead of Kelvin. Philippa Boquida almost up with them. So that is Maulana, who net is the race leader because he's the best placed of the stoppers coming out of Vale, and has actually been able to gap Kelvin Chen. Look at the gap that's widened on this outlap. So they came in nose to tail. Chen has lost a lot of time since he left the pit lane, hasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't change tyres, so it's not like they're now running on cold tyres, but just not the confidence on that coming back out. They would have presumably lost some temperature on the surface of the tyre just by sitting in the pits for a little bit. We talked about that in Laguna Seca, how if your tyres are overheated, perhaps going into the pits would cool them down and calm them down. There is a heat soak issue in the real world where your brakes actually would warm the rim of the tyre more, so you'll get more internal heat but less surface temperature. Not sure how that relates to how the car feels. That's where we need a proper expert racing driver in the commentary box rather than just a pretend one.
Now, Sean Madison, number 60, has been given a penalty for causing a collision with number 5. Now, number 5 is Charles Thesera, so maybe we're being slightly unfair on Thesera about pit stops and pace, because some of the time lost is down to Sam Madison being a little bit rough with it by the look of it. So you'll see plus 5-second penalty for 21st position Sam Madison after contact with Thesera. Right, we've got 2 minutes on the clock. What is a lap time? Is this the last lap, Ben?
Lap times are 1:58 usually,
That's right.
So we are pretty close, aren't we? The last of our pit stoppers have made their stops, just waiting for the graphics on the left-hand side to sort themselves out when they get to the bottom of the hangar straight. It's certainly not that those 4 drivers are all ahead. Certainly Ferris, Stanley and the Ferrari and Ryan Houlihan should be dropping into the late top 10. And here we go, now we get it sorted out. Pedersen in second position. No, behind Bokida, and Bokida now looking to the inside of the Porsche, late on the brakes, side by side. Is there contact? No, there is not, and Bokida moves into second position.
And not only that, but the lead of the AM class. So Philippa Bokida takes over a class lead. She led out right early on, and a really good feisty drive back into contention, having been tapped into that spin. So you've got a new AM leader. Kelvin Chen has been there race long, but after 59 minutes just about of being the AM class leader, not anymore, because Philippa Bokida goes back ahead and reasserts herself. So she is up front within the AM category, 3 seconds back from Andika Malana. And has that spurred Kelvin Chen into action all of a sudden, thinking, hang on, I've lost my class lead, because he's trying to come back at the McLaren. Now, are they going to squeeze one more lap out of this? If they are, it gives him a chance maybe to fight back. But either way, it's Andika Maulana up front as the cars come down towards Brooklands. 25 seconds on the clock now, Ben. On to the last lap they go then. Andika Maulana is now nearly 4 seconds clear of Philippa Bokida going on to this last lap. And it's Kelvin Chen in third. And all of a sudden, Chen is dropping a long, long way back. Now, is there a problem for the Porsche? Has something developed after that pit stop? Is this about fuel? Because that car is nowhere near as competitive as it was. And it might be Kelvin Chen having lost a little bit of spirit. But just look, you can see the way the gap has suddenly opened up. And if anything, Chen now is going to come under attack, it seems, from Carl Peterson. So Peterson, the Monza winner, is closing on Kelvin Chen. That gap is 1.4 seconds. So Maulana is leading and he's now comfortable. Bokida is second. But I'm getting very concerned about Kelvin Chen because he's being caught by that man, Carl Peterson, who in turn, Ben, is taking 94, Zheng Yin with him.
Well, is this that Chen doesn't have the fuel to get to the end of the race? Is he having to save fuel and lift and coast?
It may well be. Certainly the gap is coming down, but it's not sufficiently down to give Peterson a chance to challenge, is it? So, yes, Chen is dropping away. I was wondering a moment ago whether it was fuel or whether it was just a psychological thing, but he's managing to pick up a little bit of pace. If anything, Peterson is now having to come under attack, isn't he, and defend from Yin Zheng behind him.
Yeah, he's come on strong at the end of the race. Again, these guys have been separated by the pit stops. Zheng was a late pitter. Maybe added a little bit more fuel, so now can really push, whereas Pedersen pitting early didn't necessarily have the numbers for fuel, but they're coming to the end of the final lap now, so Maulana should be coming to the line.
So Andika Maulana then is set to score a first win in GT World Challenge Asia Esports, presented by Tarmac Works. There is the checkered flag. Andika Maulana takes the race win. Who is going to be second? It is Philippa Boquida, and she is the winning AM in the process. And third is going to go the way of Kelvin Chen, Carl Peterson fourth, Yin Zheng fifth, and Ryan Houlihan in sixth position. There is Andrew Lawrenson, who is going to come home in 10th place. So Kin Long Lee taking ninth. Championship's going to be fascinating at the end of this, isn't it? With drivers in different places. A weird result in a sense for some of them.
And there was definitely something else going on in that race with strategy. Fuel was more of a thing, I think, than we thought. And perhaps getting the tyres all the way to the end of the race as well. I wonder whether they just said no by the end of the 1 hour because of the cold temperature. If it had been a normal temperature, if it had been in its 20s, probably not normal for Silverstone, then maybe the tyres would have lasted for an hour. But I think perhaps there were some struggles that we weren't aware of at the end of that race, that's for sure.
And are they going to translate into the pro race, I wonder? Well, it has given us a third different outright winner of the season. Carl Peterson, Mia Rose and Philippa Boquida now are our AM victors. So plenty of shuffles, plenty of new results to consider out of all of that. Andika Maulana victorious, Philippa Boquida second, Kelvin Chen third, fourth Carl Peterson, fifth Yin Zheng, sixth Ryan Houlihan. That's a good result for Ryan. That's his best of the year. Ferris Stanley taking seventh, his best of the year, and Ryung Kim eighth after that penalty having led early on.
Yeah, and below that, then you have our championship leader, King Lee, going on the outskirts of the top 10, and Lawrenson, our last time winner, on the outskirts of the top 10 as well. So kind of rip up the form book that we had coming into this race. We've got a new form book to write, although once all the maths is done, I think Maulana may have a decent championship lead. We'll have 2 more races to come for them at Spa-Francorchamps and Suzuka. And look who's back. Paul's here. Nice to see you, Paul.
Thank you very much, Ben. Thank you, David. A fantastic opening race. It felt, Ben, to me like the race that nobody wanted to win. So much strategy involved, the different pit stops, which make a real difference in an event like this, don't they? Stop early, stop late, stay in the middle of the race. Really exciting racing.
Yeah, I wish I knew a little bit more as to what was expected out of that one, because obviously the track temperature being so low meant that the tyres struggled to last the distance. We saw the Porsches struggle to get them up to temperature at the start of the race, but there was obviously something going on with fuel for some of the more thirsty cars as well, and the Mercedes needing to run on map 2, that would have compromised their pace a little bit.
Yes, significantly. In fact, I found that fascinating watching the broadcast. I think it's really the first time we've seen that sort of strategy employed in the GT World Challenge Asia Esports Series presented by Tarmac Works. And maybe that's a failing on the driver's side of things. You should put a little bit more fuel in so you can run flat chat. Or do you take the strategic advantage of having a lighter car but have to fuel save at different points in the race? But Ben, one thing I did want to mention was a fantastic performance by Philippa Boquida to win the AM category, to finish second overall. And all this while suffering an incident in the early part of the race that set her quite far back. A great drive from Philippa today.
Absolutely mega to have Mia Rose represent the females in the AM category last time out, and now Philippa Boquida winning again, and so both of them so high up. Mia finished, I think, 5th overall, Boquida on the podium. So it's a real battle of the girls there. We didn't see too much of Mia Rose. I think she had a bit of a struggle around Silverstone, but depends on the car, and the McLaren is definitely the car to have at Silverstone. Not quite sure whether it's the car to have when we move to Spa in a couple of weeks' time.
And I think actually that touches on a really good point. Silverstone, as we mentioned at the top of the show, is a very different kind of circuit than we saw last time out in California at Laguna Seca. And our professional drivers that are racing, our professional pro and am real world drivers, will have seen the race. They'll have been taking note on how the different cars behave, the tyres, how the strategies play out as well. And there's a lot of useful learning there, isn't there, Ben, towards what they can put in for their race that comes up next.
Yeah, well, they will not only have the experience of watching that race, but I'm pretty sure a lot of the drivers that we saw in that race will now be getting onto their respective teammates and telling them what they experienced, and be there as kind of a spotter and kind of a strategist for them throughout the next one encounter. Expecting, I suppose, to see similar weather. If we were going to have rain, it was going to be in that first race, because it's really unfair to throw rain into the mix for the guys that are less experienced. It's such a challenge. But no, if you're in a team like Laundry House or like Craft Bamboo or Tarmac Works, I think we'll then see those sim drivers really helping out the real world, telling them, make sure you're on lap 2, make sure you take a couple of litres of fuel in the pit stop, be careful on the tyres, don't push them too hard too early.
Yep, thank you. And if everybody that's watching the broadcast at the moment, if you've just joined in or you missed the start of the show, just to explain to you what is happening, we've had our first race. It was a 60-minute event, and it was for e-sport drivers, professional and qualified amateur drivers. The next race that we're going to be throwing to very shortly is for real-world GT drivers, isn't it, Ben? So we've got some big names in there that you'll recognise from the Asia region GT racing and from other different categories, and that's also broken into a pro and an am category, so they're racing for their championship as well. And as Ben mentioned just then, there is varying degrees of experience with these drivers. So some of them are quite well versed in the world of sim racing, some of them are very new to this sport. And Ben, have we learnt anything from the first two races about our professional real world drivers? What are we expecting to see from this next race?
We've learnt a lot, that they've learnt a lot. They've really, it's been a steep learning curve for many of those drivers that maybe didn't have a Assetto Corsa, didn't even have a sim. I know we didn't have a sim before they announced this championship. So they've had a huge amount of learning to do to get themselves up to speed. A lot of them are very, very strong now. And if you look at the results with Kevin C taking 2 victories in the AM category and Divishen Padiachi winning both of the races overall, you'd think, oh God, it's quite predictable. But neither of those really led and dominated either race. There's a lot of drivers that are perhaps faster, but less consistent or getting caught in issues and troubles. So it really is always a fascinating 1-hour race just to see how everyone copes with the conditions. Silverstone's not an easy circuit, and also just keeping out of trouble.
Yeah, and I think that's also an aspect of GT3 racing, both in real and virtual world, that makes it such a wonderful championship, is the diversity of brands, different engineering philosophies for these cars. And because we're running, you mentioned it in the live broadcast, we're running a balance of performance across the field, but of course different tracks will suit different cars. You had the uphill downdale of Laguna Seca last time around, where you really got to have some grunt to get up into the very famous corkscrew set of corners. But Silverstone's a very flat track. It's a very quick track, high corner apex speed. You need a lot of ability to turn the car, accelerate it and brake it. And as we've seen in that last race, Ben, that plays to the strengths of certain brands and certain cars in this championship, which will have an effect as well on the overall competitive order of this next real-world driver race.
Yeah, in terms of how the cars perform, we can pretty much say that the McLaren is a good car to Mercedes. Also a good car to have. Perhaps the fuel mileage isn't quite as optimum. Porsche seemed to work well once they got them up to speed. But really, I think that is more relevant when you come to the professional sim racers, the guys that extract the best, the last tenth out of the car. With these guys, it is more about minimising mistakes and being able to try and be consistent within themselves as drivers. They can actually, as we saw in the last race, achieve similar lap times at their best to what we've seen in the sim guys. But they can't do it lap after lap after lap like the sim pros can do.
And there is the key difference, I think, between real-world drivers taking to the sim racing space and sim racing professionals. Sim racers, we're not constrained by the need to hire out a track, pay for fuel, get the team to different parts of the world. Sim racers can fire up their rig at home and do almost limitless number of laps just with how much free time that you've got. And make no mistake, our professional and amateur sim racers that took part in that last round will have put a significant significant amount of practice into their preparation. And to go on to the real drivers, this is their third race, their fourth if you count the charity event that we had. So they're building their experience level up. And as we've seen from the likes of Filippo Bacchina in the last race, overtaking in these cars at Silverstone is entirely possible. But for the real drivers, Ben, for the first 2 rounds of the championship at Monza and last time out at Laguna, we saw a fracas in the first corner. The first lap or two, there were cars bouncing off of each other. Everybody was a little bit too enthusiastic. So as you say, trying to keep out of that danger zone is going to be vitally important, isn't it, for these drivers?
Race start's really interesting because the old pit lane start at quite far down. The start line is halfway down the straight towards Copse, whereas the finishing line is actually on the corner of Woodcote. And the way that Assetto Corsa Competizione at the start means these cars are trundling along at 40 kilometres an hour up until the point where the leader gets to that start line, and then they can accelerate, which means they all approach Copse very slowly in comparison to, well, even if you watched in the real world, you'd see an acceleration from the leading car, Woodcote, and they would get to Copse at a much higher rate. But because in the way they manage that procedure, they do approach almost, well, they approach so slow that I don't think you need to brake going into Copse, which means you can run side by side, and your braking zone is the first braking zone to its actually, which means that you really start sorting each other out. Yes, there'll still be mistakes. Yes, you still need to make sure you don't touch anybody else. We saw a very clean start from our sim guys, and I expect the real guys to do the same.
Yeah, I hope so. And Beckett's, of course, is a daunting section of corners to be the first significant braking zone of the lap. So hopefully our drivers will have employed the lessons that they've learned from previous experience and put that to good use in the opening lap of this race. Now, for everybody at home, thank you very much for tuning in. We're glad to have with us for this presentation once again. I've been watching the comments on the YouTube channel, so great banter
Cool.
amongst you all. So please do continue that one, and we hope that you're enjoying this broadcast of the GT World Challenge Asia Series presented by Tarmac Works. And don't forget, we've got another race upcoming, and then next time out we're heading to the mighty circuit de Spa-Francorchamps at the end of this month on the 24th. So do put a date in your diary for that one. It's only 2 races left, 2 rounds left after this one at Spa and at Suzuka for the conclusion of what has been an incredible, Ben, it's been an incredible championship, and it's outstanding to be able to bring this level of esports sim racing to the Asia region as well, which is something that's really, really impressive how this has all come together.
And Paul, don't forget that on the 18th of November, so 8 days' time from now, Assetto Corsa Competizione gets its 2020 update. So they are adding 2 cars. They're adding the 488 GT3 Evo, and the Mercedes is also getting an update, but the cars will not be eligible for this particular championship, so we won't see that. There is also a new track in Imola being introduced. Lots of people very excited about that. Again, we won't experience that. What we will experience, though, is the brand new for 2020 Pirelli tyre. So all of those setups that everybody's been working on throughout the season are going to be ripped up and thrown out the window because, well, the tyre shouldn't be that different, but it is going to behave slightly differently to what we've experienced before. So there might have to be a little bit of relearning quickly before we get to Spa-Francorchamps.
Yeah, and variety is the spice of life, as they say. We love a little bit of something thrown into the mix to mix things up a little bit, but our drivers are doing such a great job at showing consistency. As Ben already mentioned, we've had winners for both the first races, the same one, Duvian Pariache, yet he's not dominated. Pariache in the last race, if I remember correctly, got involved in the sort of melee in the first corner, but still worked his way up to the front of the field. So you can overtake in these cars, you can overtake on these tracks. You've got strategy. Do you pit early? Do you pit late? Do you see what your track position and gap to your rivals looks like before jumping down pit road? And that's what makes these championships so exciting to be a part of. And with 25 points for a win, although we've got a perfect score at the top of the field so far in the real world drivers, the championship's wide open still, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got 3 rounds, and if people can keep themselves out of trouble, then we should definitely see a different winner. We're just about getting ourselves ready now to jump to the race grid, and so it's time to hand over to our race commentator, David Addison, who will take us through the next hour's worth of racing. We've had an issue with our formation lap, and therefore that is why we've been rambling a bit too long, Paul, for most people. But everybody is now getting into the server, getting themselves onto the grid, and we, in a few moments' time, can go to David Addison.
Hardly rambling then. I was hanging on your every word. Right, we are good to go. The sun is shining at Silverstone, so for the sim drivers, they have the fear of rain. For the real world drivers, well, the track conditions are good, and it is Aaron Borg who is going to line up on pole position in the SRT Team Sydney Mercedes. You've been talking about the Magarigawa. He didn't so much luck into the win at Laguna Seca, but it was a last gasp win because Matt Solomon seemed to lose that late race. Bit of contact. Well, Pariachi has had 2 wins in Pro. Kevin Say has had 2 wins in AM. So we've had the same winners both times out, both classes, but that doesn't really tell the whole story of the championship this season. Aaron Borg lining up with Melvin Moe for company. We were told on the front row of the grid. But the way that they have set off, this is somewhat different. Jia Tong Liang, who on one graphic was shown as being 6th, is on that graphic shown as being on pole position. Well, he's not. That is number 4, Aaron Borg, so he'll be totem pole. Jia Tong Liang should be on the 3rd row, 5th he should start, in fact, the man that's 3rd in Pro of the championship. So Aaron Borg on pole. Now, he's 9th in the championship in his class. Melvin Moe alongside is 7th. Division Pariachi 3rd on the grid, championship leader, that's the easy bit. And then 4th, again, Laundry House colours, Evan Chen, who had a really rough time at Laguna Seca, didn't he? Because he got roughed up with most people's incidents, and I think he might have triggered 1 or 2 of his own. On the 3rd row, you've got 99 Jia Tong Liang, 3rd in the championship, and 555 is Adam Lee Fong. He is the man that's 7th within Pro. Then you get to the newcomer, number 74, Louis Pret, whose father, Philippe Pret, was a European Ferrari champion. So too is Louis, and he's also done a bit of Asian Formula 3 and Formula Renault racing, and he is the global head of retail for a Monaco-based fashion house. So welcome to the championship. Billy Lowe is the driver that's 5th in the AM championship to line up alongside. Then it's Kang Ling and Sean Tong. Matt Solomon starting next on the grid, number 36, having, of course, led much of the race at Laguna Seca. Alistair Young alongside him, 10th in the Pro Championship. His dad is next. Alex Young is lining up alongside the AM Championship leader, Kevin Say. Then you've got Aaron Lim and Jasper Tong, brother of Sean. The next row, the brothers Dang, Dominic and Freddie. And then next on the grid in 213 is Tenku Asian Lei, who is 2nd within the Pro part of the championship. So a bit like we saw, Ben, for the sim race, it's a very jumbled grid indeed, isn't it?
It is a very jumbled grid. I think there is a bit of jumbling still going. We have seen that Matthew Marsh has been unable to connect. I think he has now connected, but he's at the back of the field. So that's a bit of a shame for him. And I think Liang is the pole man. That's what the graphic is saying on both the screens I'm looking at.
Okay, but he wasn't the pole man in terms of his time. He's not there on the track either. He should be 5th on the grid. So I think what you've got on the track as somebody's off the road in the background is right. The graphic is slightly misleading because based on the graphic that I was sent with the times on it, Liang should be 5th. So anyway, what we do have, quite definitely, is the car of Aaron Borg on pole position and Melvin Moe lining up alongside. So what we have on the track is what it should be. That's right. And Jia Tong Liang will start then 5th as the cars now make their way through and up to the start of our second 1 hour of racing. So all the confusion, hopefully, we can get out of the way on the green flag lap, can't we, here? And then we can go racing. But it's Mercedes that look very strong in the sim race up at the pointy end of the grid. Keep an eye to Division Padiachi. They're third on the grid in the black Mercedes because he has been the winner of both races thus far this year. The cars come into Woodcote Corner then now. You've got this long run though, not towards the timing line but the start line, much further down the pit straight, halfway down to Copse Corner. And as the cars get themselves in formation, there's the timing line, the checkered finish line in front of the timing room. 1 or 2 cars in there as we get set for the lights to change. Now the race gets underway with Aaron Borg blasting away from pole position. Up the inside line to go third, Division Padiachi. So it is Borg from Mo from Padiachi, but Melvin Mo standing his ground around the outside line there. Is he going to be able to get the race lead as they get towards Magnets for the first time? Yes, he does. Brave stuff round the outside. And also Evan Chen really brave. He goes third at the expense of Division Padiachi.
And still side by side, plenty of, not really a braking zone as I said before, until you're really down to Stowe. So lots of people trying to sort themselves out. As you said, a couple of people in the pits who have struggled to connect. Jiatong Lang was one of those. That's why he was showing as our leader, because he actually wasn't, he was in the pits.
Right.
And a few others have disconnect or have not been able to connect. So that's what we were seeing. That's why we were slightly delayed for the start of the race. And now it's sort of starting to get himself sorted out. 3 wide going into club though.
Out of which it is going to be number 4, is it? Still Aaron Borg. Padiachi is a man on a mission. No, in fact, it's Melvin Mo who is through in the lead, is it not? So out of club corner they come. Melvin Mo leads. Borg second. Padiachi third. Mercedes 1, 2, 3, 4 then as they go through Abbey for the first time. We've got one of the Audis running wide, and in fact, very wide. Big drama there going down towards Abbey. One car flicks into the air and Bentley caught out in all of that as well. And there's an mayhem. There's a Honda off the road, there's an Audi off the road. So that, Ben, is going to be everything that the sim race wasn't in terms of driving standards. They're still at it going into Village with cars everywhere.
I was a little confused as to who we were looking at there, because it said we were looking at 10th position, but there was a lot of cars in front of him. Evan Chen, I think, was one of those that spun, the first that spun before getting to the first corner. So that was the Porsche that we saw facing the wrong way, not the first corner of the Grand Prix track. And that was one of them that was missing, but there's quite a few that I think will have retired to the pits. Timing screen should now sort itself out as the cars come over the line for the first time, and this might be a little less confusing on lap 2 than it was on lap 1.
Not convinced, because I think Jiatong Liang tried to do a lap to get himself to the grid, so that's why he is now being shown as a lap ahead of everybody else. So we are on to lap 2. But ignore 19, afraid there is a bug in the system somewhere. So Jiatong Liang is not really the race leader. We're looking at battles lower down, and for everybody's place, you take a position away. Evan Chen, though, into the pits after damage. They're going through is Billy Lowe in the Audi that was off the road earlier. There'll be quite a few people, whether they pit or not, then, after that first lap, that are going to be carrying damage here.
Yeah, absolutely, and that will affect the pace of the car quite considerably throughout the whole of this race. They had the choice to go into the pits and repair it. Dominic Ang was part of that incident. Heng Ming, Andrew Harianto, Tenku Izanlei, and Matthew Marsh is seen as in the pits. We didn't see Matthew. Evan Chen was that Porsche that was facing the wrong direction. So I'm also expecting penalties to come quite high up in our order because Chen was only 5th or something going into that first corner of the Grand Prix lap, and therefore probably, and it wasn't even at the corner, it was on the start finishing straight of the Grand Prix track, so definitely contact. Perhaps he came off the circuit, came back on, got tagged, but race control with some work to do.
Right, now this is Jiatong Liang, who is not the race leader, as you can see, because he is in 4th place. So the graphic is somewhat distorted. Start from the pits, he did an extra lap to the grid for some reason. So he is tricking the system as he comes through Luffield. But up front it is Melvin Mo who leads the way. Second, up towards the line, is Aaron Borg. Division Padiachi is 3rd, and Jiatong Liang, 3rd in the championship, comes through now in 4th place. Ignore that graphic, he's not a lap up. And there, rejoining, stage right, is Evan Chen, but he's lost a lap now, of course, by serving that pit stop. The good thing is, he's got that regulation stop out of the way, though, hasn't he?
Yes, I suppose so. With full lap down, he's never going to get that back up again, but at least he's complied with the regulations. And I suppose, such is the differentiation in pace for the different drivers, we may still see him getting a half-decent result because he certainly has the pace in a way that a lot of others don't.
Absolutely right. Good little fight going on behind Yachi, because you've got Jiatong Liang there going out of Stowe, but then behind him, hustling on is Kang Ling to try and gain ground, and he's just got himself up past Louis Pret, and the BMW of Aaron Lim running then in 8th place right now. They're going through is Padiachi.
Apparently he is P5, Jiang Ling, so he did take the start of the race.
Yes.
But he's a whole lap ahead. I'm not quite sure how they're going to sort him out. Oh, Louis Pret there having a very interesting accident. Almost turned the wrong way. Perhaps turned into a slide and it turned into a spit. But Louis Pret, we've seen him do some work. We've seen him in the European Series, I think. And now P6 he shan't be anymore.
Yeah, just to clarify, it was a lap from the pits to the grid for Liang that's tricked the system. So he started with everybody from the correct place, but that's why the grid graphic was confused, and is still confused, because he put himself, if you like, a lap ahead of everybody. Ignore the graphic for the moment. As far as the leading five are concerned, it's all right after Liang. So there, for example, 12th is Ferrari number 50 of Hideto Yasuoka, who started his motor racing career at Silverstone in the 2002 BRDC Single-Seater Championship. So this is a virtual return to where it all began for him. He's under attack from Alistair Young as well, the Axel Sports Lexus. These two, 12th and 13th at the moment. So Alistair Young has dropped back from where he qualified, but over line goes the Ferrari. And a stop-go penalty of 10 seconds now being given to Jiatong Liang. What do we know about this one, Ben?
Well, it's not come from... Well, actually, it's coming in from race support. So this is a race control human decision, perhaps because he missed the start of the race, but then was able to get onto the grid. Oh, that's interesting battling going on there. Some very funky lines through Maggots and Beckett's, and Yasuoka losing out to... is that Alex Young?
That's Alistair. That's Alistair. The penalty is coming for causing a collision with Evan Chen on the first lap. So Liang is being penalised for contact with Evan Chen. There is Division Padiachi. In the meantime, the championship leader getting himself onto the back here of Melvin Moe, is it? No, Aaron Borg, forgive me. So Aaron Borg, the man that qualified on pole, got jumped, didn't he, by Melvin Moe in the Mercedes, which is leading the way, the Craft Bamboo Racing car in Moe. Aaron Borg's Team Sydney car in second place, and Padiachi, the Australian, in the Tarmac E Motorsports entry. There it is, running in third place.
Yeah, keen to jump on board with these Mercedes. Now we've learned about the need to fuel save from our sim racing friends. There's no way on earth that these guys will be less fuel than the sim guys. Just in the way that you're driving, you'll probably end up using a little bit more. So it would be interesting to know if those Mercedes have already decided to run with map 2 and use less fuel. Rick Young all over the place, over the curbs. Amazing to keep the car facing the right direction, driving it like that. And there's a Mercedes rejoining. 3-4 wide. Woohoo!
That is insane. 4 wide into Village. Does anybody benefit out of all of that? Let's see. 88 Ferrari was ahead and gets sideways, so Rick Young scrabbles through, and it was 66 Mercedes of Nan Lin that was also in a bit of strife there, but Rick Young up and down the order all at the same time. Through that, Antares Au with the Porsche so briefly gained, and Freddie Ang in the Honda that went really well at Laguna Seca until it got nerfed out of the way late race. Freddie Ang is the one that has come through up into 21st position, and the Honda NSX is charging.
There's lots of unconventional things going on
Yes.
in this race, and that was one of them. That was incredibly brave, and somehow Antares Au actually got the car slowed down enough to make the corner, as well as dive bombing 3 cars and going through the middle of them. Here are our top 3 Mercedes, though, running line astern. Aaron Borg didn't really have the ability to show his pace in our Laguna Seca race, because whilst he was on the pole position, or on the front row at least, he got turned around, didn't he? So this is now him running where he really should have run in our previous races.
And they're all bunching up as well. So as we've had the first 6th of the race, the first 10 minutes elapsed, now the leading 3 almost as one. And for Aaron Borg, it starts to get difficult now. This is a guy that's come from karting and raced Toyotas, the GT86 one-make sports car category in Australia, and he's on the back of Melvin Moe, very experienced long-distance racer in GT cars. The gap coming down between them and Paddy actually closing up as well. So any one of these three could yet be a winner.
Yeah, and I wonder whether we are kind of slightly fueled, slightly sitting in the slipstream, being kind of endurance about this race rather than being sprint. It seems to be very, they all seem to be behaving themselves, and the pace is not really particularly fast. So interesting kind of approach to the race at the start from our pro drivers.
Although, having said all of this, they're getting away from the rest, aren't they? Because look behind, there is nobody. It's a massive, massive gap after Paddy before there's anybody else. So they might be fuel saving, and they might also, in fairness, have gained ground because of earlier accidents and skirmishes, but they have pulled a long way clear as Antares Au dives up the inside there, going into Brooklands, puts himself up ahead of Taniguchi. So, and also Nan Lin is slow at Luffield. So Antares Au round the outside, Porsche on Mercedes, they lean and they rub, and Antares Au is going to go through. Yes, just gets the job done as Taniguchi, number 72, goes for the pit lane, the video game developer. And there, Nan Lin cannons into the back of Antares Au, fires him off into the gravel. That was a definite yellow card, surely.
Yeah, it just came from too far back, too late, really. They would have got a little bit of an audio warning, but it was far too late for Antares to bail out of that one. And so, very unfortunate, well, not unfortunate, unnecessary contact between the two. Plenty of penalties being handed out, race control working its way through lap one. And Louis Pret has been given a penalty for contact with Billy Cao Fung Lo. So, Billy's still in 14th position, third of our AM drivers in the Audi. But obviously there was contact between the two of them at the start of the race.
Just the one to keep an eye to now, possibly Kang Ling, to see what he can do from 5th place to get himself onto terms with that train of Mercedes. There's Jietong Liang as well to factor in because he's 4th, and then if he can clear him, can he go after these three, which, even if, as Ben suggests, they are fuel saving, are still doing a very good pace because they're not exactly being clawed in by Ling or Fong or Aaron Lim behind. The leading AM, by the way, 8th is Kevin Say, who, remember, has had 2 wins out of 2 in AM, just as Paddy has in the pro category. But Aaron Borg right now is looking a bit more toey, isn't he? A bit more committed in his quest to get himself up and past Melvin Moe as they ride the curbs here, going into the Beckett's S's once again.
Well, you're right about the lap times. 5 zeros from these top 3, and Kang Ling on a 59.3 last time through. Adley Fong half a second slower than that, and his Lamborghini dropping into the clutches now of Aaron Lim. But then if you look further down, everyone else is at least in the 2-minute mark. So certainly the top 5 have got better pace than the rest of the field, and these 3 Mercedes are the class right now.
Down to the end of Vale they come, diving into the braking zone. There is Mercedes number 4 then of Aaron Borg, the pole man, but jumped off the line through Beckett's by Melvin Moe. That really brave move. Round the outside, Melvin Moe leads. They come past the wing. That's the Formula 1 pits. In the current configuration of Silverstone, you go right at Abbey and left at Farm. Abbey always used to be a fast left-hander, not anymore. Swing up through Farm and then into the twiddly bits. Hard on the brakes, right at Village. Burst of acceleration and then to the loop, which takes you to Aintree. Get this wrong, you are really compromised onto the Wellington straight that takes you down towards the stadium.
A couple of warnings being handed out as well. So 24, Kang Ling has got a warning for contact with 20, and 20's got a warning for contact with 24. So that is Alex Young and Kang Ling both being warned for contact with each other.
And here's the Young family as well, because 10, which is Alistair, ahead of 20, which is his father Alex. So the 2 Youngs together in 10th and 11th places at the moment. Alistair Young then breaks for Brooklands, single-seater graduate, Formula 4 and then Asian Formula 3, whereas of course his father got to Formula 1. But both of them now finding a career in GT racing. Alistair Young comes out of Luffield. The other thing to factor into this, of course, Ben, pit stops. We saw many of the drivers in the sim race leaving it until quite late, but those that pitted early and got out of traffic did seem to have an advantage because they would rejoin in clear air.
Yes, exactly. But with the field spread that we see from these drivers, I think there will be less clear air to have. If you drop yourself to the back of the field, you might quickly get on to traffic that is running significantly slower and therefore could hold you up quite a lot. So it might not shake out in the same way as we saw from our sim drivers.
On board with Padiachi here, and when his hands allow, Ben's going to have a look at all the data on the dash. Most important thing we're looking for towards the bottom right corner in the little red box is the map. And it's map 2, which, Ben, means what exactly?
Not quite as much fuel being burnt than map 1, which usually everyone chooses map 1 and it's fait accompli, but here it seems that Mercedes can't run a full hour on map 1, and so they've turned it down to map 2, saving a bit of fuel. There may be Mercedes out there not done that, but then in the pit stop they may need to take more fuel. It might also just be a Mercedes thing. We remember we saw it in Monza for the Charity Cup race of the European season. They did the same thing there. They're not as slippery through the air as, say, a Lamborghini for sure, but then how does the BMW or the Lexus slot into it? I'm not quite sure. Perhaps less significant because they're a bit further down the field. In fact, number 2, Aaron Lim, has just been handed a stop-go 10-second penalty for a collision with 38, which was Kevin C. C still in 8th position, but and Lim just ahead in 7th, but a big penalty for a collision on lap 1, and race control living about 15 minutes behind the rest of us. Right, on board with Melvin Moe, map 1 for Melvin, so he perhaps has chosen the strategy of sit for longer in the pits, run slower, but that does mean, that does kind of a question mark, why is he not driving away from the guys behind him?
Yeah, because they're breathing down his neck, aren't they, right now, as he comes down towards Stowe Corner, and we'll set the car up, turn into that right, down through Vale. There is Dervishan Padiachi, and he is on the tail of the poleman, Aaron Borg. Well, that gap just opened a little, so you can see different Mercedes drivers doing different things within the engine map, and that gap has widened just a touch because of the gremlins that have gone into the graphic. You can't measure the gap between the pace quite as accurately, but Mo is edging away slightly now from Borg. He's almost up to a second, so bit by bit he's breaking away. Part of that might be Borg having to defend, of course, from Padiachi and losing time by going defensive.
Yeah, and then the question mark about time is quite as we saw in our sim race. We've got very different conditions here for the real world drivers. I think the last time I looked it was something like 30 degrees track temperature. Now let's have another quick look at what it says. 13 degrees. So actually the track conditions are the same, but the weather conditions are better, so more sun. So we should see more heat in the tarmac by the end of the race. But they will need to be careful, therefore, if that temperature is as low as it is, not to put too much work through the tyres as well.
That's the run down Wellington Straight that you're looking at with Alistair Young, number 10, Lexus, trying to wriggle his way through traffic. 2:13 BMW there of Ijan Lay, second in the championship, but losing a place there. So Young carving his way through, and Tenku Ijan Lay delayed, I think, on the opening lap of the race. He's already a lap down, isn't he, running out of sequence?
Yeah, has done this pit stop, but certainly had down collisions earlier on. Dominic Ang and James Russell, the two drivers that have fully retired out of this race, decided not to take any further part after so much action and incident in the first couple of corners. Louis Pret, fast but fragile so far, has served his penalty. He's got some work to do. You can see that he actually hasn't served his pit stop, even though he's been in the pits. He does still need to do his proper pit stop because a penalty pit stop does not count. Another penalty being handed to the 67 car. Now, who's in 67?
Jasper Tonk, rather.
Oh, P7 right now.
And so that's causing a collision with multiple drivers. So there were so many, it's going to take too long to list them all, according to race control, just multiple drivers. So yeah, that's quite a significant one, isn't it, out of the leading group. Did Jia Tong Liang serve his penalty? No, that's the stop go, so he's yet to serve that, hasn't he? The man that's currently in 4th place.
Did we not see him do it? I think We'll see when the graphic goes back up again, but it's impossible to know actually where he is in the race because of the graphics giving him one extra lap.
Exactly.
Yes, I'm not quite sure how we're going to work that one out come the end of the race.
Yeah, we just need to see where he is in terms of track position, don't we? 9080s though, which is Freddie Ang. So his brother is out of the race, but Freddie persevering, the TCR regular, and he is on the back of the Mercedes there. Look, as they drop down towards the end of Vale. So the Mercedes of Darrell Young is the car that he's looking for a way past, and they are 16th, 17th, these two, but the Honda looking good as he tries to make the move against the Mercedes here, past the wing. Now to the inside line goes Freddie Ang, lines up to have a go on the inside line, gets squeezed a little bit up onto the curb. Darrell Young gets forced out wide and he slots back in behind, so Ang gains a pace.
Yeah, and again, not a pass that you would generally see in the real world because it's very, very hard to run side by side, but a bit of compliance from the two of them and a nice move, and again, look, side by side here, and that's working out for Kevin C. Or actually, no, Kevin C. losing his position there to Alistair Young is getting his head down.
But Kevin C. still leads his class. That's the thing for him here. Ample class points. So, yep, it's a position lost overall, but he's still comfortably clear of Billy Lowe. And then Matt Solomon is the third of the AMs. Even though Matt Solomon led the bulk of the Laguna Seca race, he is quite a long way down and being shown within this as being an AM. Now, he was a pro on the original entry list. Why is he being shown as an AM? Plot thickens. Anyway, there is 555. That is Adley Fong in the Lamborghini, and he is running currently in 6th place.
Yeah, so there was a couple of glitches with the graphics on the left-hand side, including Louis Pret, who's in the pro class, not the AM class. So it is a reliance upon the drivers to choose their class when they enter into the race. They have to choose which one they represent. Things are not quite marrying up. You get a fine if you were in the real world for that kind of thing, but I think we're calling it lack of experience when it comes to even getting into this race and putting an extra lap on yourself in comparison to the rest of the field. Not sure I've ever seen that done, but the real world drivers are achieving amazing things.
Yes, in all sorts of ways. Aaron Lim in the BMW there is currently running, 16th? 9th is best this year. And the Malaysian driver, who was briefly connected to the Malaysian A1 GP team, if you cast your mind back a long, long time. Now, this is for the race lead, and Division Padiachi has dropped a long way back, and Melvin Moe has been reeled in again by Aaron Borg. Now, what's going on here? Because Borg was busy defending from Padiat, he's shaken him off, and all of a sudden we've got a proper lead battle going on. The gap between these two, 0.4 of a second as they run down towards Stoke Corner, heading towards the braking area now. Turn into the right-hander, let the car run a little bit wide up onto the curb and then charge down through Vale. Don't go too wide, otherwise you get into the track limits woes. But Aaron Borg very definitely taking the fight to Melvin Moe right now. The two leaders come through Club Corner almost as one.
Yeah, that's really nice, the track limits through Stowe there. If you do run a little bit deep into the corner, it's quite hard to actually gain an advantage, a significant advantage. You might get a lot of warnings for doing that, but the temptation through Stowe is to run a little bit fast and to really explore the exit and track limits there. And the guides that you don't generally make up enough to be given a penalty of doing that. So you can push the boundaries in other places where perhaps if you cut across the chicane, you're definitely going to be deemed to have gained an advantage and you'll be instantly given a penalty. At Stowe and the exit of Copse in Acido Corsa Competizione is much fairer, I feel, and much more rewarding and enjoyable experience when you do make those tiny errors of maybe turning in a bit too early or carrying a tiny bit too much speed, which forces you wide on the exit. You don't get so heavily punished.
Well, right now, Melvin Moe leads Aaron Borg. I'm still intrigued as to know where Padiachi has fallen to in relation to these two, because the gap seems to be widened. Over the line go the two race leaders into Copse Corner. So it's Mercedes first and second, with Division Padiachi now the best part of 4 seconds back. So you've got the lapped Evan Chen Porsche, but did Padiachi make a mistake somewhere? Because that's the most likely reason for him having given away that big chunk of time that has released Borg up onto the tail of Moe.
Well, pace over the last 2 laps has been about a second off these guys. So,
has it?
And these guys also have lost pace to where they were before. So maybe it is being passed by Evan Chen in the Porsche has put him a little bit off sequence, but certainly the pace is nowhere near where we were at the very start of the race.
Sean Tong have served their pit stops, incidentally. As you look at 81, Philip Tang there, the GT World Challenge Asia regular, the Lamborghini from the Buddha Racing Squad, accelerating up out of Aintree Corner now onto Wellington Straight, and Tang going after Sean Tong, although it's really Tong with his pace working his way through. Now, Tong is significant, remember. He's done his pit stop. Yes, he's a long way back in 21st place, but Sean Tong knows what he's doing in sim racing. Third, his best of the season. He's wriggling his way. Plenty of time in which to gain more ground, hasn't he?
Yeah, difficult to know whether he was one of those drivers that got caught up in incident before. The last lap he did a 2:01, so that suggests that he either has damage or hasn't got the pace. And in fact, he's just on a 2:02. So bearing in mind our lead is 59, sometimes 58, he doesn't have the pace to match what the guys in front are doing in a way that we saw with King Long Lee in our sim race. The person to watch out for, I think, is Evan Chen, who was obviously disposed of halfway through lap 1. 58.5 was his last lap, and yes, okay, he's down there in 24th position right now, but his pace is good enough to be faster than our leaders right now.
Whoops, contact there at the end of Hanger Straight as well, as Sean Tong bounced off the Ferrari of Rick Yoon, I think that was. They got away with it, but the Audi is being really hustled along here. Sean Tong is coming through, come what may, as they drop down to the end of Vale. Into the left, into the right, so Sean Tong chipping away. He's got to get through the traffic as rapidly as he possibly can, and of course he might be being helped a little bit, net, by the leaders squabbling once more. If Melvin Moe is having to think about defending, he'll have to take slower lines, and this is all going to affect the outcome at the end of the half an hour. It does come back to this strategic element of when you ought to be pitting. There is 38, that's Kevin Say, who is still leading the AM category.
Yeah, and has about 3.5 seconds to Alistair Young in front, and then Alex Young is about 2.5 behind, so not too troubled at the moment, although there is traffic around him. Yellow flag flying somewhere out on circuit, and there must be a lap down around him as well.
Yeah, it is. That was one that I think got caught up early on. It's 2:13, isn't it, which is the Tenku Ijeonlei car. Bad news for him, second in the Pro Championship, but he's a long, long way back in terms of position here.
Yes, he had a really good run last time out at Laguna Seca. Right. Again, kind of surprising for a BMW, but again, got caught up in accident on lap 1 and therefore pitted early, repaired damage. Aaron Borg diving down the inside. Very late on the brakes. Is it too deep? He's got the inside line for Luffield, and that's a classic Silverstone move, especially when it's a national circuit and there's only one corner to overtake on. Beautiful move from Aaron Borg. But I think you will find Melvin Moe will have a lot more grunt running on a different fuel map, and he'll be able to attack at the end of the long straights again. Let's
have a look, nose to tail. The new race leader is Aaron Borg. He's done it from pole position. He's dived through. It's taken him nearly half the race to do it. As we got to the 32-minute mark, he went through then, 32 minutes on the clock, but he's in the lead. Is this going to be the chance for Melvin Moe to get back through? As Ben suggests, he'll be quicker in a straight line. He's good through the Beckett's S's anyway, and there is a back marker up the road. So Borg ahead of Moe, on to Hanger Straight now they come, and down towards Stowe Corner. Is this where Melvin Moe is going to line up to get the lead back? Actually, the gap doesn't exactly disappear, does it? Aaron Borg has, for the moment at least, been able to fend him off.
Yeah, we didn't get a very good run, Melvin Moe, out of Beckett's. He was a little bit deep into the middle part of it, and therefore a bit slow off the corner. And through the corners, actually, Melvin Moe is not as strong as Borg. That's how Borg has been able to get past. But when it is purely down to grunt, you would expect Melvin Moe to have a little bit more. Although, now sitting in the slipstream, he has the opportunity, potentially, to do a bit of fuel saving as back markers get in the way for Borg, and he gets turned in on as well, so he has to come out the throttle. This will allow Melvin Moe to get a bit closer, because that back marker is really causing issue.
He's closing under braking, but he's not closing on pure pace. There's Evan Chen behind, who's a lap down. They get up the inside of the Mercedes, the lapped Mercedes. So now Aaron Borg has done it. Melvin Moe has got to try and find a way through the traffic, running in second place then as the cars sprint down towards the left at Brooklands. But look at Evan Chen, he's a lap down in the Porsche, but he's matching the leaders on pure pace. So it's an even more bitter pill to swallow in a sense, given the delay he had on the first lap, because had he not been a lap down, he could be fighting for race honours. As it is, he's now got himself stuck behind the Mercedes. I think that might be Nan Lin that we saw getting involved in an incident earlier on in the race, as over the line, Borg to Moe, it's nearly a second still. What is happening behind is that Pagliacci is closing.
Yeah, and that back marker really wasn't helping at all, was he? He would have been being shown blue flags. They would have been appearing on his screen, but it felt like he finally got scared out of the way when Melvin Moe came past, but it gave Borg a hard time to actually properly make a move as though they were racing each other.
And because of that traffic, so Division Pagliacci has closed back up, but now it's Aaron Borg leading from Melvin Moe. 9/10 when they went over the timing line. Pagliacci runs third. In fourth, I reckon, is Jiatong Liang. Fifth, Kang Ling. Sixth, Adderley Fong. So there is Moe, but it's all going to change around, of course, after the pit stops. So need to try and place Jiatong Liang around the traffic, don't we? So we know where he's going to blend back in after the next round of stops. Or the round of stops, because the leaders have all got to serve them. The leading stopper, Sean Tong, in 20th place right now.
Yeah, and Sean not particularly fast. Actually, neither for the moment is Matt Solomon, who's the second of our stoppers. And Evan Chen is a fast stopper, but he's actually on the same part of the track as our leaders. So whilst usually when you make the pit stop you put yourself on a separate part of the track and therefore benefit or don't benefit from the traffic around you in comparison to where the leaders are, right now the leaders and Evan Chen are on the same bit of track and therefore they're experiencing the traffic at the same points of the circuit, meaning that Evan can't really play the advantage of having made that stop. And of course he is also effectively 2 minutes back, having had to make that stop and have damage and being spun round so early on in the race. So he's still massive disadvantage to him, but there are big gaps at the head of the field, so he still has the opportunity to slot in to maybe by the end a P5.
What he is doing, I suppose, he's being spurred on by the race leaders, isn't he? He's matching their pace, so he's running at a proper pace. That's what I was saying a lap ago. It's frustration because he can run with them, but he's a lap down. So it's a bitter pill to swallow. Had it not been for that contact, who knows what might have been. There is Sean Tong then. He's up into 18th place. Now, Yasuoka has pitted, and assuming he got out ahead, that will make him, in the number 50 Ferrari, the leading pit stopper.
Yes, and quite a long way ahead of Sean Tong. So let's see how that all shakes out. The Ferrari, very economical as a car generally, and so shouldn't have needed to do any fuel saving, shouldn't needed to have added fuel to the car. They shouldn't be changing tyres. So that is perhaps more of a reflection of where these guys will be falling into line. Yasuoka was 7th or 8th, I think, before he pitted. Expect that kind of placement, and it just shows how far behind Dong, Solomon and Chen are.
Just saw Kang Ling going through. Kevin Say, meantime, heads towards Stowe. There is 38. So the Mercedes leading its class. Ignore the BMW that's a lap down behind. Goes down through Vale. But you've got Kevin Say ahead in the class. Billy Lowe a long, long way back. So Kevin just needs to keep out of trouble here and do what he has done very effectively thus far. Now, that is Jiatong Liang. Now, the reason we want to look at him is to try and place him, don't we, really, in terms of the opposition. So who is he ahead of? Who is he behind? I still think he's 4th ahead of Kang Ling, but there he is going to Stowe Corner. So I can tell you currently he's 50 seconds into the lap, which would place him behind Louis Pret. And remember that he's taken a drive-through penalty, so he has done a pit stop, though he's not actually shown to have done a pit stop. Now 1:02 into the lap, between Louis Pret and Aaron Lim. Right, okay, brilliant. So that puts him 12th. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, yes, I've forgotten about his drive-through. I was putting him a little bit higher up than that. So he is between Pret and Lim, as you say, and that's relevant for after the pit stops. 67 BMW is the car in the hands of Jasper Tong, Sean's brother, and he's on the tail of Louis Pret. So this is a battle for position now as the cars come down towards us. So Tong on the attack as he tries to get up on the outside of Pret there. He's not going to be able to do it.
Such a big car, isn't it, that BMW? It just looks big in comparison to everything else.
Yeah, you're right. Jasper Tong, he's had a 34th as his so-called best this season, but looking a lot stronger here. You'd think that this might be a circuit that favoured the BMW with good long straights and fast sections where it can stretch its legs. Louis Pret goes through ahead. His debut in GT World Challenge Asia Esports presented by Tarmac Works. And Pret there, his next target is going to be Billy Lowe, but he's about 15 seconds back as you see number 5, Yui Tam, the Singaporean driver, rejoining after a stop. Porsche specialist Yui Tam. Whoops, gets a little tap in the tail there from Jasper Thong to say, get out of the way, please, I'm coming through. And Yui Tam, whose wife Claire Jedrick is a racer as well as TV presenter back in Singapore. He is just briefly nudged out of the way, and Yui battles his way now down towards Stowe. Last visit to Silverstone was in the real world for Porsche Super Cup 2 or 3 years back.
And some of these drivers, I believe, are participating from Macau, where they've set their simulators up in their hotel rooms, where they are in quarantine for the Macau Grand Prix, which is happening in 1 or 2 weeks. All drivers coming in from out of different countries have to quarantine for 2 weeks before the event, and so someone like Darrell Young, I believe, is in quarantine ready for that race and has brought his sim. So there's actually no excuse for Darrell. He should have been practicing literally the moment he got off the plane till now.
You tell him, Ben. Yes. Never anybody go and drive for
Nothing else to do.
Well, I was going to say, never go and drive for Constant Endurance Racing, because clearly the team manager is a hard taskmaster. So, ruling with a rod of iron. Right, Aaron Borg, it is then, who is up front, as Liang is now being shown as having served a pit stop. So that will have been his regulation stop, will it not now? Number 99?
Yes, that was just a few moments ago. So that puts him now in a different part of the track. 1:45 into the lap, so he's now down at 18th or 19th. It'll shake out eventually, and I think the guys are trying to remove a lap from him, which I think, real world timing systems have the ability to do so. Simulated time systems, they should never have been allowed. He should never have been allowed on the track. The system shouldn't have allowed him to do one extra lap. So it's a bit of a misdemeanor, this one.
And there, it's contact with Padiachi. Division Padiachi trying to put a lap on and gets forced off the road. So that might have consequences as well. Division Padiachi came up to lap him effectively, and Jiatong Liang didn't give him any room at all. It ended up with contact to Division Padiachi being spat off the racetrack.
And hopefully not too much damage to the car, because there was a hit on the front suspension there. Luckily the timing decided that he hadn't gained an advantage, but that car may feel a bit understeery now. Hopefully not too much damage, but he does have a pit stop, so he could actually get it fixed when he goes to the pits if he wants to waste a bit of extra time, or he may have got away with it.
So there, down to Copse Corner goes 45, Division Padiachi. Now we need to be monitoring his pace, don't we? Because the man that's unbeaten this year is still down in 3rd place, and he's not really looking as though this is going to go his way. He started 3rd on the grid, 3rd in the race he runs, but is pace going to come late race? Can he take advantage of, for example, Melvin Moe's fuel map and get himself into the hunt in the last section of the race, where we're heading into the final third, aren't we? Just over 20 minutes still on the clock here.
And that's how Padiachi's races have gone, isn't it? He's not necessarily been the fastest man and starring at the start of the race, but the race kind of comes to him as he gets to the end, and it's always an intelligent race from Divishan. So I imagine he's on map 2, I imagine he's cruising, trying to keep up with the guys ahead, decided perhaps that he wasn't able to quite do so. Kang Ling taking to the grass, that's an interesting way of overtaking 2 cars. And is he going to be able to do so? Yes, he does. Just about. Interesting.
Yep, gets himself ahead of Matt Solomon there. So Kang Ling yet to stop. Matt Solomon has stopped, so he's lost a lap out of all of this, has he not? Matt Solomon, the Australian-born Hong Kong driver. Kang Ling charges on in the Lamborghini. driver that switched from a Mercedes that he drove in the European Esports Championship to the Lamborghini for Climax Racing for GT World Challenge Asia Esports Championship, presented by Tarmac Works. There he is, up at the loop.
Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't get a penalty for that. He was so far off the track on both corners. But as I've spoken about a few times, the system knows exactly how much you've benefited. He would have certainly had a warning, but he didn't benefit enough over his other lap times to be deemed to be given a penalty. Zhong Lang has got another one.
Yes.
Tong Lang, sorry, has got another penalty. Stop go 30 seconds. Presumably that's for causing a collision with Padiachi, and he might as well, after today, throw in the towel perhaps, or take a cold shower, because it's been a fraught race. 2 penalties now, and somehow missing the start but getting himself a lap ahead of the rest.
Yeah, there's a photograph that's done the rounds of him trying to wriggle his way through to his grid position, but having driven out of the pits, that triggered the pit exit loop, if you like, and put him into the race. So, yes, we know it's a mess, and it's something else that everybody now has for the first time come up against. So the system needs to be tweaked, and it will be tweaked for the next race. As on track, this is what we need to focus on now. The lead battle is well and truly joined once again. Division Padiachi certainly dropped from it as Melvin Moe has a look. Couldn't make that move stick at the end of Vale, but he's got the inside line for Club Corner. Has he got the drive coming out of the right-hander? Yes, yes, yes! Melvin Moe gets his race lead back then. Jumps back ahead of Aaron Borg as they come now past the wing. In the background is the lapped Evan Chen, but Aaron Borg did lead. He's back down to second, and Melvin Moe, with 19 minutes to go, is leading at Silverstone once again.
That was a cheeky move from Melvin Moe, sticking his nose down the inside pretty late so that Aaron Borg kind of, again, got scared away from the apex. He would have got the audio warning and the visual warning that there was a car on the inside of him. Doesn't want to spin around, doesn't want to make contact, so gives him the room, and that compromised his momentum totally. And eventually the move was done through the second part into Club, but it took a while, and it just shows how there's a different kind of technique in ACC overtaking than there is in other platforms. You get your nose down the inside. If you know that the other guy doesn't want to have contact, then you're kind of scaring him off the apex. But Borg has had enough. He's gone to the pits.
That gets him out of the battle, doesn't it? That gets him out of any traffic, gets him out of any potential delays. So it'll be interesting now to see where he comes back in. Liang has rejoined despite that most recent penalty and pit stop. So he's still circulating. And Melvin Moe now has the chance to build this gap, doesn't he? Because although Evan Chen is behind him, he's a lap adrift. There's no sign of Padiachi behind him. So Padiachi is wilting very definitely. Is he in? Yeah, quite so. You're right. So he's pitted. So that would be Kang Ling, the next driver to do any chasing. So now Melvin Moe treats this like a qualifying session, doesn't he? Clear real estate around him. Push, try and build the gap for after his pit stop.
Padiachi, I think, has leapt Aaron Borg in the pits. Let's have a look. This is Aaron Borg. It just saw yes, he has. He's just ahead. So Borg lost time because of the fighting, but that's been a longer stop for Borg as well. Bearing in mind he's running fuel map 2, that hasn't worked out at all for Borg. He's got work to do on track now. It was a black car. Let's just have it fully confirmed by our timing screens, because at the moment still saying Borg ahead of Padiachi, but once they get to the end of the hangar straight, it should be confirmed. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I think you're right, because the little P graphic disappeared from Padiachi before Borg, and there is confirmation of it. Padiachi 5th, Kevin C, who has yet to stop, has split them. So yeah, Padiachi has jumped ahead on the pit stop, so it was a slow stop by Borg. And is this now a race that might come to Padiachi? A good stop, a conservative early pace. We're still possibly a bit concerned about Melvin Moe on map 1 on the leading Mercedes. So with 16 and a half minutes to go, where is Padiachi going to be in relation to Moe when the race leader serves his pit stop?
Yeah, one of the things that you do have in other platforms that you don't have in ACC is pit stop time. We haven't quite got to that point, although I'm sure it's something on the list of things to do for the developers Kunos. Pit stop time would then give us an idea as to why one is has overtaken another, and for sure Padiachi had a shorter stop. He was quicker into the pits the lap before, but it's a bit too much guessing for my liking to work out exactly how he's managed to do that. But I'm sure that Kunos will get themselves sorted with a pit stop time like you have in other simulators. It's easy enough to do. It's a car. It's how long has he stopped for? Put it on the timing graphic and give us a little bit more understanding of what's going on.
Just remind me about Matthew Marsh, who's now done his pit stop and his 20th. Did you tell me that he started from the pits or from the back of the grid?
Back of the grid, he disconnected before the start of the race and reconnected, I think, probably too late, so he was put to the tail of the field.
Okay.
Then I think he also got caught in issues, so he is way back.
Right, that is Kevin C coming into the pit lane then. So the Craft Bamboo racing car of the Macanese driver, the AM class leader down the pit road. Billy Lowe and then Nan Lin, the top three in AM, because Louis Pratt is a pro and so is Matt Solomon. And there you've got the race leaders and straight and Division Paddy actually now trying to wriggle his way up through the traffic as quickly as possible.
Yeah, because he's got Aaron Borg right behind him there. Borg's managing to get past the BMW. There's still that Mercedes, pesky Mercedes between the two of them that's been causing various issues with the leaders throughout our race. And the Fong 11 seconds back from this, having done his pit stop, but Ling without the pit stop in the other Lamborghini. Now those guys, Fong hasn't lost that much ground really, having made his pit stop, because he was about 5th position before he got the pit stops from the top 5, and he's come out of the pits in about the same spot as it all started for him. Melvin Moe now in the pits as the lead.
That's right. So the race leader comes in, and now we'll get an idea of where Paddy actually will blend in relative to him. Then that's going to put Kangling into the lead for the moment, and Alistair Gunn also yet to stop if they stay out of that to Eric's second place. Stop-go penalties keep coming and going next to the name of Jiatong Liang. But away goes Melvin Moe, and he's pit. Very, very far extremity pit lane, so he's about to be joined. Paddy actually makes a run through an uphill here.
There you go, that little bump means that he can reset and off he goes. Coming out of the pit lane, and yeah, way ahead of Division Padiachi. So that has been a very good stop from Melvin Moe. How he's managed to do that with map 1, who knows? He certainly didn't take very much fuel. So have they done the numbers? Has he actually done the calculations, or is he going to run out of fuel at the end of this race? But either way, pits and has a very healthy advantage over the rest.
Well, has he got enough for 13 more minutes? There is Division Padiachi through the traffic, going around the outside of Darrell Young. So Kangling leads, but yet to stop. But this could be the races for Melvin Moe, couldn't it, if they've got this absolutely right. Now, of course, you can spend as much time as you want or as much time as you have on your sim. Is a full race distance and therefore fuel economy figures, Ben, something that they will have worked on, or do most people just worry about a setup and outright pace for qualifying?
No, absolutely. Presumably, from the first couple of races, we haven't had an issue with fuel. You haven't needed to worry about numbers. So there could be the assumption that you don't need to worry about numbers here, and therefore don't do the calculations. But we know that the Mercedes can be pretty tight on fuel throughout the races, and so I don't know. Craft Bamboo are using their real-world engineers as engineers for this sim racing series. So, and they have the sim guys. They have a sim element to their real-world team as well. So the information should be being passed between everybody to know that it's not possible. Maybe Melvin Moe's doing something that we don't know, but that didn't seem like a very long pit stop. We can see that he's using map 1. I just fear that I would be amazed if the information hasn't got through. Definitely, especially with a team like Craft Bamboo, so professional in the real world, bringing all of that experience into the virtual world. They're just doing something clever here that I don't know what it is, and neither do you.
I mean, the other thing that we don't have, of course, in the virtual championships are safety cars. In the real world, a safety car or a full course yellow would slow everybody down and buy you back a bit more fuel, but we don't have that.
And if you were doing a race, and there are plenty now hosted on ACC, a 6 or a 12-hour race where you have multiple drivers, then of course you're going to run a stint to see how long the fuel lasts, full stint, and tyres, and do all those calculations in a way that actually you can't do in the real world. you'll effectively run a race simulation for at least an hour to know when you're next pitting and to set your driver change schedule. But in a single driver race like this, where it doesn't seem like you actually need to do any kind of pit stops, you may not.
Well, right now, Melvin Moe is looking mighty strong up front, isn't he? Because the gap that he's got over Pagliacci is a whopper. So, unless it's all going to unravel. Now, there is Melvin Moe. He's on map 2 now, is he not? So, he was on map 1. He's now on map 2.
Yes, he is. So, there has been a change, and maybe, therefore, he was able... maybe you can run map 1 for just a bit of the race and then switch to map 2. So, you don't need to run map 2 for the whole of the race. We might even see Aaron Borg switch to map 1, having done his fuel saving early on in the race.
Possibly so, and therefore we might get them all bunching up towards the end, as there Matthew Marsh comes under attack with the Nan Lin Mercedes behind Matthew, a little bit sideways into Brooklands. Nan Lin, who we saw be quite aggressive earlier on, I think got away actually without being penalised for that incident at Cops Corner, but coming now out of Luffield, this is the battle for 17th and 18th places up towards the line.
Not fair. Whenever we switch to Matthew Marsh, he's always in strife or a little bit lurid. That was very much 211s around the 111 around the outside of Brooklands, leaving some marks as he was sliding through the corner. Quite hard actually to slide in a sim race because as Pagliacci flies through, and Aaron Borg as well. That's the difference in pace between our leaders and our guys further back. Came from absolutely nowhere and flew through. But it's very hard to know actually how much a car is rotating and sliding when you're sitting in a sim, because you don't get that sensation in your bottom. So quite clever actually of Matthew to have control of that slide and to make sure the car didn't swap ends. But it's not been an easy one for him. He started so high up at Laguna Seca, had a really good first couple of laps, was in the top 5, and it kind of all unravelled for him in the second half. And it unravelled before even the start of the race in this one.
So, right now, Aaron Borg stuck behind the Porsche. Pagliacci escaping up the road. Map 2 for this Mercedes. Goes to the inside line, puts a lap now on Matthew Marsh. The laundry house at Porsche loses track position to the Mercedes. Into Village, then brake hard, turn right. But Devisham Pagliacci doesn't need to be worrying necessarily about Borg. What he wants to do is to try to chip away and get onto terms with Melvin Moe, but just doesn't look like it's going to be happening, does it? Melvin Moe is still looking strong with 8 minutes to go.
He's miles up the road as well. He's, I think, 10 or 11 seconds up the road. So I can't really explain what's going on. Now we're on to map 1 with Aaron Borg, so he has decided that he's saved enough fuel. And you actually can see when he's switching it, because his right hand comes off the steering wheel, and that is simulating him either tweaking the traction control, the ABS. If it goes down to his right hand side, which you can see on a different view, then he's doing his and I think that last one was him switching his fuel map. So Pagliacci on the right hand side and Aaron Borg on the left hand side, pretty much the same settings by the looks of it.
So you've got Pagliacci then with a clear road ahead of him. You've got Aaron Borg with the Pagliacci Mercedes in his sights. So the one ahead is the one on the right, slightly confusingly, but out of the Beckett's S's onto the hanger straight now comes Pagliacci. And this is Aaron Borg's view. Under the vehicle bridge they go, down towards Stoke Corner. 7 minutes to run. Now, Kang Ling pressing on. Ben, are you able to get within the game and see what his lap times are like relative to Melvin Moe? I'm just wondering how much of that 18 seconds, or how much more than that, he's going to lose with his pit stop.
Well, 2:02 was Kang Ling's last lap time. Melvin Moe doing a 59.7.
Oh, right, so it's coming down markedly, yeah.
Yeah, and these guys are doing 2-minute laps. So, actually, Melvin Moe seems to have the pace on track as well as being so far up the road. It's really going very well the way of Melvin Moe in this race.
It is, and perhaps against expectation, as you say, all the evidence would have been that he'd be struggling for fuel, but it's just fallen into his lap, and he's had to work for it. You know, he was battling early on. Makes you wonder whether he was happy to let Aaron Borg have the advantage for a few laps because he could sit behind in the slipstream and save some fuel, knowing that he had the pace to power his way back through. Now, Billy Lowe has got himself up past Kevin Say for the lead of the AM class, and he was a long way back. So Billy Lowe now has jumped up and ahead of the man with the 100% record. That, as I said early on, you've had the same guy win in both Pro and AM, and that's looking as though it's going to change in both classes today, with somebody beating Padiachi for the first time and Kevin Say now having fallen back behind Billy Lowe.
Yeah, Kevin Say's 2:13 last lap, made a mistake somewhere. Probably not enough for him to drop behind Billy Lowe on that last lap, but could also be carrying fuel. Actually, Billy Lowe, his last lap time was a 2:31, so not entirely sure whether that was a lap out of the pits or what's going on with my timing screens. Alex Young apparently has done a very slow lap time, where his the number 10 comes into the pits, but 20 is down. I can't see on my screen now, but I think he's lost a lot of time as well.
But he had a drive-through penalty, did he not, Alex Young, for causing a collision? So maybe that's why he's dropped down.
Yes.
And Kevin Say was only 14 seconds ahead before the pit stops. Whoops, somebody running way wide. Was that Darrell Young, I think, coming on to Hanger Straight? So whether it's a slow pit stop for Say and or a mistake as well, we'll try and unravel post-race. But either way, we have for the first time Billy Lowe looking as though he's going to be able to defeat Kevin Say. But the Mercedes route for overall honours is going to continue, even if it's not Padiachi. Melvin Moe looking as though he is going to be the man, as you see in 26th place. Rick Ewan about to get attack as Inchan Ann's Porsche for one racing gets up alongside him and tries to go through.
Rick Ewan just about managing to keep the momentum by running way off circuit there, and it stays ahead, rattles the car over the curbs. You wouldn't be able to do that in real life. That would upset the car hugely. Darrell Young also going grass tracking ahead. Right, leader of the race is now in. Kang Ling has taken to the pits. Where will he come out after it all shakes out? Pre-pit stop he was fighting with Adley Fong. He was just ahead of Fong, wasn't he? He was the lead Lamborghini, and let's see whether he can hold on to that. Fong's actually upped his pace. He's in the early 2 minutes now, so it could be relatively close. And Louis Pretzelo is also a pit stop in 6th position. He's been in the pits once already, but that was for a penalty. So yes. Pret is out of position in 6th position.
So for second place, effectively now, Padiachi and Borg together, 3/10 between them. And there's probably time for one more lap after this, depending on where the race leader is on track, as Melvin Moe will sprint down towards Stoke Corner onto Hanger Straight. Come Padiachi then, and Borg running still together. And we need to see where Kang Ling bleed back into all of this as well. But it's Mercedes 1, 2, 3, and the dominant brand of the real championship continues here at Silverstone as Aaron Borg looks for the inside line. There in the background is Kang Ling. So actually he is still in with a shout of a podium here, because the way that he's going, he is closing on the two Mercedes, isn't he? So Kang Ling, by staying out later, has done a pretty good job, I reckon, out of all of this. And Padiachi, who can't escape, can't shake off Borg, they might just be caught before the very end by Kang Ling. Now, out of farm they come here, the left-hander. Keep an eye to the Lamborghini behind, but also we need to keep an eye to where the race leader is, Melvin Moe, relative to the clock.
Yeah, and if these guys fight too much down the inside, like that, then they're going to just invite the Lamborghini to come and play. It needs to, if it's going to be a pass, it needs to be a clean pass and not a half faint move that was never really going to be on.
Well, Kang Ling's best of the year, or better, out of the two races, to be grammatically correct about it, is an 8th. And right now, Aaron Borg here, whose best or better has been a 5th, is on the tail of double winner Padiachi. So through Luffield they come, but keep an eye behind. There is less than a lap time left in the race now, but did Melvin Moe squeeze through with more or less than that lap time left on the clock? Over the line, goes second and third. Where is Kang Ling? 1.4 seconds back. He's close, but I'm not convinced he's going to get close enough, but he's having a red-hot go, that's for sure. Flat through Copse Corner. Wide in the background goes Ling.
And I think this is the last lap by about 15 seconds, so I think this could be the final lap. Melvin Moe still has the pace, hasn't run out of fuel, pushing hard, massive gap to this battle for second position. It really has gone incredibly his way. I can't really explain it, and it's a a difficult one to dissect. Perhaps that somebody can look back at the replay and work out exactly how he's managed such an advantage. But here comes Borg, has a little sniff, huge traffic which is going to catch them all by surprise, and there we go, side by side, Borg comes through.
So Borg then gets alongside Padiachi, but there's still traffic ahead. He's on the outside line. Padiachi gets back through, nerfs into the side of Antares-Al. So Padiachi goes second. He's delayed. Al is off the road. Borg is up the inside. Is he going to take the place back? No, he gets boxed in. And there's Kang Ling. He's going to go way, way wide. Antares-Al bounces off Piachi. Take that. He says, you've hit me, I'll hit you. Kang Ling, having gone out wide, doesn't benefit. Surprisingly, Borg is alongside Padiachi. Antares-Al is in the way. Now one Mercedes past him, two Mercedes past him. Just about. And Borg breaks late. Is he going to go by? It's going to be touch and go. Kang Ling is back with them up towards the loop for the last time. Possibly the clock's about to hit zero. It's still Padiachi just ahead. Wow, what a battle.
But yet there's still traffic to contend with going into Brooklands, and that Lamborghini is there to benefit from all of this fighting. Padiachi needs to dive down the inside into Brooklands, but we've also got the leader coming to the line.
So it's going to be a race win for Melvin Moe. Wait to see either him or the checkered flag graphic. The leader coming out of Woodcote Corners. Melvin Moe wins, and there, contact. Padiachi is hit by Borg. Ling gets past both of them. Kang Ling is going to be second. Division Padiachi will scrabble home for third. And Kang Ling was given that on a silver platter, wasn't he? Second is Kang Ling. Third is Division Padiachi. Fourth is Aaron Borg. Drama after the flag as there's more incidents than is really necessary. But Melvin Moe, sad that we didn't see him take the checkered flag for his moment of glory. That was a great drive. Melvin Moe wins. Kang Ling second. Division Padiachi third. Aaron Borg fourth. Adelie Fong fifth. And we wait for sixth, that should be Alistair Young, with Billy Lowe, the winner of the AM class. But yeah, drama right to the very end.
Really close, and you know, without contact, the traffic really getting in the way. But just unfortunate. I think that Padiachi really did put the anchors on into Luffield, and there was that little bit of contact that put it sideways and just invited Kang Ling through to take second position. Very unusual to see a Lamborghini so high up in one of these races. So Kang Ling's done an incredible job, but look at the gap, 14.6 seconds behind Melvin Moe. I don't understand. I don't understand how he's done it. I really don't.
Part of it, you could argue, was Padiachi, who lost a bit of time because of the incident with Liang, as he got forced off the road. That might have cost 3 or 4 seconds. There are lots of things that all have to be added together, I think, to give that. But the gap at the end, as you say, yes, is a mighty one.
And we will have a chance to speak to our winners, hopefully. So we'll be able to ask them, or Paul will be able to ask them exactly how they managed it. Melvin Moe, with a car that, in theory, could not make the full flat out with fuel, but he was pushing hard for most of it. And then a quick stop that was better than everybody else.
Fantastic stuff. Thank you very much, David and Ben. What an incredible... We suggested at the beginning of the show that this could be the more dramatic of the two events, and from beginning right to the very last corner, we had that one, Ben Constanduros. What a fight throughout the field, and a deserving, if somewhat surprising, race winner.
I work it out, Paul. I really don't, strategy-wise, I don't get how he managed it. It wasn't that he was particularly slow, but he always had Aaron Borg alongside him, or close to him, throughout most of that first stint. And then Borg pitted, and then Melvin Moe pitted, and suddenly Melvin's got a 10-second gap. Just unbelievable.
Well, the upshot is that is a race win for Melvin Moe, first of the season. Division Padiachi, who won our opening 2 events, somehow managed to recover to third and was incredibly lucky in the final corner not to be spun all the way around in his fight for second. Okay, the Lamborghini managed to sneak through, but third place will feel for Padiachi like a solid recovery, I think, from what could have been a heck of a lot worse.
Yeah, but Aaron Borg did not want to spin him around, and it was just so unfortunate. They'd done such a fantastic job of being side throughout the whole of that last lap without very much contact, hard racing each other, trying to get around the traffic and the back markers. And so Aaron Borg definitely, came out of the throttle to make sure that the contact wasn't too great. Paddy actually, remember, had also had contact a little bit earlier on as well, so perhaps wasn't driving the straightest of cars. And ultimately survived. He'll be annoyed that the Lamborghini snuck through, but it was gifted on a plate to Kang Ling.
It was indeed, and such is the way that racing goes. Often it's worthwhile holding back, seeing what your rivals do ahead of you, and then sneaking through for the overtake. But the upshot of that all is it's been another two fantastic racers in the GT World Challenge Asia Esports Series, presented by Tarmac Works, and we're coming back again on the 24th of November for our round at Spa-Francorchamps. Unfortunately, we're not going to speak to our race winners today, Ben, but we will be interviewing those and speaking to them prior to the start of the next race, so do stay tuned for that one. And I hope everybody at home has enjoyed the broadcast, and it's just left for me to say, Ben Constantinos, if you want to say a quick few final words and goodbye to the audience.
Well, I can't wait for the next one. Spa-Francorchamps, legendary circuit. Suzuka, legendary circuit. Best places in the world. Best platform in the world. Best lead commentator in the world as well. David Addison, it's been a pleasure.
Fantastic. And David, thank you very much once again for lending your iconic voice to these broadcasts.
It's been a pleasure, Paul. We've had some great racing, and I echo what Ben says. Next stop is Spa, so we know it's a fantastic circuit. We know it's going to be full of drama. I'll just have to get real beer instead of virtual beer to go with virtual racing.
Fantastic. And everybody at home, thank you so much for tuning in. Catch us again on the 24th of November for Spa-Francorchamps. I've been Paul, and from all the team here, thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Yeah, Yui. Okay. I was like, should I message?
Maybe you should talk to the camera.
When
とうございました。
To the sponsor, man. Sean needs to start speaking Japanese.
初めてポイントゲットできました。初めてクラッシュしなかったです。
If I start speaking Japanese, it's okay.
逆にショーンはすごいかわいそうでした。っていうかまあいつもの逆。はい。いや。声が。
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for watching. I'm not going to speak much because if I start speaking, it's all going to be swearing. Hope you enjoy the race.